All right. I believe the Xbox 2 podcast is live for the first time in 2021. What is going on, everybody? I am one of your hosts, Randall Thor, 19, the man with the million. And with me, as always, my co host, Jez Corden of Windows Central. What's going on, buddy?
Hey man, Happy New Year and all that gubbins. What day is it? It's the 8th of January. A whole week into the year has gone already. Do you know how many days there are left till Christmas 2021?
How many days? How many days? Tell me.
I don't know, but quite a lot. Over 300. Oh man. How you been, buddy? Did you have a nice restful break?
Yeah, it
Hello.
was
2 weeks off the podcast.
Yeah, we haven't done a podcast since I believe December 21st. So yeah, basically 2 weeks, no show. We only did two shows in December, because I was sick for a little bit, and then the holidays hit, and we could have done one on Saturday last week. I just felt, let's just wait till the week after. But my holiday was pretty interesting. I had family. My brother had come in from New York with my nephews, and it was the first time seeing one of my nephews who's one, and my other nephew who is now five, and they had spent the week, like it was like a week and a day here, and my sister-in-law, who's my brother's wife, and it was very, like, I loved hanging out with my nephews. It was one of those things where, like, I haven't played really anything over the holiday break. There was just like way too much going on. Spending a lot of the time with family, since they were here from Christmas to like New Year's and stuff. I will say, my one cousin, or my one cousin, my one nephew, you know what game he loves, Jez? Which
What's
is surprising. Well, not surprising, but it's in the news a lot lately because it's about to go into an IPO.
Roblox.
He loves Roblox. 5 years old, and all he wants to do is play Roblox and play the different games on there. And every time he would play, he'd want me, to sit there and watch him play. So I'd be sitting there watching him play all these different games on Roblox, and I was just like, huh. I knew Roblox was incredibly popular beforehand, but then watching him, like, and how much he loves it, and then seeing this, like, the articles about how they're about to go public and it's $30 billion valuation. I'm like, I can see it. I can see it. But yeah, it was pretty cool, man. Like, just kind of chilled. Didn't do anything on YouTube. Really didn't play anything on Xbox. I mean, the other day was like the first time I gotten on Xbox in like 2 weeks, or So it was fun. What about you? How was your holidays?
Oh man, I just lay in bed for 2 weeks and did nothing. I just basically just lay in bed listening to music and just chilling. Like, this year launching, it's the first year I covered the launch of a console professionally. I mean, the Xbox One X, yeah, but like a new generation, and not only one console but two consoles launching back to back, and then into Black Friday, and then the Cyberpunk launch. It was super stressful quarter four last year. So I was like, you know what? I'm not even going to pretend that I'm going to do any work. I'm just going to lie down and actually take a real total break. And I did, and I feel great for it. And I highly recommend taking breaks. If you've never taken a break, you should take one every now and then. But yeah, that was me. I played a few games, but honestly, not much. I just zoned out, man. I just watched TV, just chilled. I watched a whole bunch of documentaries. I now know why ancient Sumeria fell apart.
Why did ancient Sumeria fall apart? Was it aliens? Did aliens destroy the civilization?
Well, I didn't watch any ancient aliens, but some people think that for sure. But no, Rand, it was a combination of political upheaval and the salination of the crop fields and stuff. They got too salty and they couldn't sustain themselves because they couldn't grow any crops. That's what some experts think anyway. So there you go. That's what I did over the day. Very productive. But yeah. We got quite a lot of news to get through though. Because
yeah. Well, before we get into that, I just want to thank everybody for tuning into the show. Let us know how your holiday went. Did you guys get anything for Christmas? Did you get your PS5 or your Xbox Series X? Any games? Make sure you put in chat, what you received, or maybe what you gave. If you gave a present to someone less fortunate, or got one something for your kids. If you gave them a Series X or a PS5 or a Series S, let us know what you guys got and gave for the holidays. And thank you guys for being here. Me and Jez both wish everybody a Happy New Year. 2021. Hopefully, it's not off to the best of starts. But let's hope it's ended up better than 2020, right? So
hopefully, let's end on a positive this year.
Yeah.
Oh man, the UK is back in total lockdown, so that's fun. That was a fun way to start the year. Oh man, but hey ho, got lots of games to play, and that's all that matters really.
Yeah. Shout out to Johnny6 for becoming the newest member of the channel. Appreciate it, man. Enjoy all the emotes that you now have, which, there's a lot of them here. Make sure you let me know what your favorite is. I think everybody loves Randall Tomato. But you haven't really been pushing that very much on Twitter recently, so not a lot of people talking about tomatoes and stuff. So
I need to get back on that tomato train.
Yeah, we do. But yeah, like Jez says, we got tons of topics to talk about. Me and Jez are probably we're gonna try to predict or at least preview what Xbox is gonna do in 2021. Some of the surprises that they've talked about. There's Phil Spencer talking about Bethesda again, and if Xbox is actually making a new console that's coming out at the end of the year, and there's a whole bunch of different stuff because obviously we've been gone for 2 weeks, so there's a lot to talk about. But before we get into that, we're going to talk about games. So if you guys could do us a big favor and hit that like button, we'd greatly appreciate it. We'll be into the topics fast because, like me and Jez both said, we didn't really play much over the holidays. In fact, the only game I really played was the game that is currently being shown on screen, which is the Gears 5 DLC Hivebusters. And when we talked about it last, I'd only played it briefly. You hadn't played it at all. And you're the big Gears fan, right? You're the one who was always talking about Gears is better than Halo. What did you think?
That's a low bar, to be fair, though. Let's be honest.
What did you think of the Gears? What did you think of the Gears 5 DLC? When you go on Twitter, a lot of people talking very positively about the Hivebusters DLC. Did you enjoy it?
I was like, when they announced Hivebusters, I was kind of like skeptical because Gears hasn't always been great at doing the spin-off kind of stuff. Historically, I don't know. I just had Gears judgment in my head for some reason. So I thought, yeah, I'll get around. My mentality was, I'll play it eventually. I'll get around to it. It's in Game Pass. It's not going anywhere, But then I saw everyone on Twitter talking about how great it was and how good it was, and the visuals and the setting and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, maybe I should bump this up my backlog a little bit. And people saying it's not too long. You can get through it relatively quickly. And I was off for Christmas, so I thought, me and my brother will go old school and play some local co-op Gears like back in the day. And I loved it, man. I absolutely loved it. I think it was just so unexpected that it would be of such a high quality, because it just sort of came out of the blue. It's not like something they announced that was coming too long ago. They announced it and then it was out basically. And I loved it. I thought it had some really cool set pieces, some really cool memorable moments. I thought the characters were great. The visuals were awesome. The environments were interesting. And they even changed it up by adding some new monsters here and there. Don't want to spoil it if anyone hasn't played it. But yeah, I just thought it was really good. And I was really impressed with it. It kind of made me wonder, is this a formula that Gears could, go down? Where they just sort of have these sort of bite-sized little DLCs that are just appear in Game Pass and stuff like that. Is that a formula that could work for other games? I don't know. It was just really interesting. What do you think of it? Did you play it?
Yeah, so me and my buddies Loveboat Gopher and my buddy Sam, and if you're looking to play Minecraft, make sure you send my buddy Sam an invite. He loves to play Minecraft. And the reason I say that is because he has a 3-letter gamer tag, Sam. So a lot of young kids think he is their friend Sam from school. So he gets tons of messages and invites to Minecraft being like, Sam, we talked about this. I thought we were playing Minecraft today. You know, because the little kids don't like understand that he's not their friend Sam. That's just so yeah. He gets
Oh man,
tons of invites for Minecraft because the little
I wonder
kids.
if that's why I get invites for Minecraft too, and my gamer tag is Jez. So I wonder if that's why I'm getting invites as well. Maybe not as frequently as someone called Sam, but
Yeah,
I
it's
do
kind of
randomly
funny.
get invites for Minecraft.
It's absolutely hysterical. But no, we were running through High Busters on Insane, which like insane difficulty. There's a couple spots there that are pretty difficult, like because on Insane, if you go down, you don't go down, you just die. And if somebody dies, you got to start over, right? So, and a lot of the enemies can kill you in one shot. But like we were having a blast with it. The way the game looks, I reiterated again after last time we talked. Like I think it's the best looking game on the Xbox Series X, and like I honestly think this is a direction they could take Gears 6 in. I don't know. It just seems like maybe it's due to the shorter runtime, like 3.5 hours instead of whatever Gears 5 was at. But I'm having more fun with this DLC than I did with the campaign, and I really enjoyed the campaign. I don't know. It's like it opens up the visual palette that you don't normally expect from a Gears game. Like the first level is set in like a jungle, so you see a bunch of greens, oranges, reds, which you don't normally see because most of the time Gears you're in like maybe a underground cavern that's like brown or like a city. But a lot of the levels in here are like visually really they pop, and with the additions of the ultimate abilities, which you don't like. And to be fair, they're not really the best on Insane either. Like Lonnie's knife is basically useless because like enemies can one hit you. Like Keegan's ability to refill ammo is a lifesaver on Insane because you need all the ammo you can get. But I'm impressed, and I played a ton of DLC on the 360 on the Xbox One, going after achievements and stuff. And I will say, most of the time, the vast majority of the time, 90% of the time, like the DLC is nowhere even close to the main game. This is one of the few examples where not only is it as good as the main game, but in some areas you can say it's actually better than the main campaign. So
Yeah, I really liked the pacing. Like it was just like a little bit of context, and then you were into it. And but at the same time, they bantered through the level, and you got a sense of like what motivates them really quickly, and they're like really interesting. Some of their backstories, and I was just like, man, it almost feels like because it was a DLC, it's almost like they felt more confident to try new things, and they weren't worried about offending core Gears fans by doing something different. And because like they removed that arbitrary restriction on themselves, it felt like everything just felt more confident. I will say that I don't really like the ultimates. I think it's kind of like for the similar reason what you said. Even though like the knife it just doesn't feel good to use, and then like you've got the ammo replenishment, which feels totally super powerful and really good. But I think like it's a cool concept to explore in more depth if they can like I don't know, make them more interesting and stuff.
yeah, I
More
totally agree.
Overwatchy, I guess, if you
Yeah,
want to go down that route. But I don't know, it was exciting. I really liked it, and I'm happy they did it, and I'm hungry for more, to be honest.
yeah. That makes me wonder what they're gonna do for Gears 4 or Gears 6 rather. Like, is it just gonna be? Is this more of a like kind of figuring out some new techniques and seeing if the fan base likes it before they go full out with that for Gears 6 story? But yeah, it's really good. It's you can play it, you can buy it. It's like $20, or if you have Game Pass Ultimate, you get it for free. I wish Microsoft would push it more, like market it more. You didn't really see them do much with it for how good it is. And normally, like you can tell what Microsoft thinks about something by how much they market it. And this really didn't receive much marketing outside of, hey, it's free and Game Pass Ultimate, which kind of goes back to the whole marketing talk that we've always discussed here, that I think Microsoft needs to really kind of change in the future, where they're really good at marketing Game Pass, but they're not so good marketing like individual games. And I think what they need to
No.
do going forward is like move away from the value of Game Pass, because that's what they're really focusing on, and actually market like this insane game
Talk about
that
the
is so
content.
good. Yeah, this game that is coming out is so good. You have to play it, and oh, it's in Game Pass, instead of always just talking about like the value within Game Pass. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
they
I
they
agree.
they do that well, but they need to focus on individual games and how the individual games like then can sell Game Pass be based on how like great they are. And maybe they will. Maybe like when Starfield, the marketing starts up for that game, and if that, is the next true big, Bethesda RPG on the scale of a Fallout and Elder Scrolls, then maybe they could do it with that game or something like with the Wolfensteins or Valds or Fables, but they really haven't done that. It's all strictly just like, hey, Game Pass is insane value, isn't it, guys? It's like, how about like, oh, you need to get Game Pass because it has this insane game in it, this incredible game. I think I want to see more marketing for that. But Gunstar has a question for us. He says, Happy New Year, guys. Would you prefer Highbusters every 12 months for 4 years or one game every 4 years? What do you think, Jez?
Mm,
Would you rather get a DLC every year or, one game every 4 years?
both.
Both?
Why not both? Microsoft can afford it. I don't know. I don't know. It's that's a difficult choice because it's kind of like I don't know. How do you measure that? It's kind of a difficult choice. I
Um,
think Gears could potentially go down that route of being a smaller sort of almost service-based plot game with the multiplayer as multiplayer free. Basically what Halo's doing with the multiplayer going free to play, and then you can like, you know, just sort of add context with these story beats and these story DLCs. We actually don't really know how long Hivebusters took to make because it's not like the Hivebusters are new. They're sort of like they are the characters from the escape mode, and they've had comics and stuff like that. So this has been something that maybe could have been in the works for like a fair while. We don't actually know for sure. At least I don't. Do you know how long
I
it's
mean, I don't
been?
know how
How
long.
long?
I mean, it was rumored even around the time the game came out that there was some sort of DLC in the work. So, like people had, there was like images I think I remember kind of coming out and be like, oh, what's that from? So yeah, I mean, based on the game, I would imagine it was. And what, it came out a year after the game launched, right? Because Gears came out in 2019
Yeah, something like
September,
that.
and then
Yeah.
this came out, in 2020. Uh, Potentially, maybe even delayed a little bit by the pandemic. Maybe it was supposed to launch alongside the console. Or maybe it wasn't. Maybe like they felt like, well, we'll have it come December. I would say maybe it probably started development maybe after they finished the main game, or at least content complete on it. Because I mean, there's a lot in this campaign, even though it's a little bit shorter, 3.5 hours. It's still pretty meaty. So
Yeah, there's some really great moments. And like they do reuse an area a couple of times, but it's like it makes sense in the context of the game that they did why that happens. I
yeah,
don't know. It was just really good. I just really impressed with the way they did that. But I don't know. It's an interesting conversation to have about whether they could go do this more on a more permanent basis, make the multiplayer free, keep it updated in perpetuity, and then sort of make these like smaller story beats to keep people coming back to the game. You know,
I'll be
I
one
don't
to
know.
say though that I don't really. Even if you made, let's say the next Gears came out and the multiplayer was free, like Halo Infinite is free, right? Even if Gears multiplayer was free, I don't think it would make that big of a difference because I think people are over Gears multiplayer. Like Gears multiplayer has been a known thing since 2006, and I think people are kind of uh, like they tried a lot with Game Pass and the arcade mode for this one to get like really casual people into it by making it more accessible, because there's a ceiling you hit with Gears where you can have fun, but then as soon as you start actually playing against better people, you end up like with getting people running like wall sliding or wall bouncing across the map with like shotguns and stuff. And I just don't think that multiplayer is wanted on the level of like the Halos or the Call of Duties or the Fortnites, where even if you made it free, I don't really think it would pick up a lot of new users. And to be fair, it's also probably too what's the word? Gory, violent for free to play for kids to like pick up and play. That you would be targeting with the free to play game, right? So there's that too. Like, would you have to tone down the gore and the violence to kind of target a younger audience? And if you did, how would the actual Gears fan base kind of react to that? So like what I want the coalition to do is like learn, like take all the positive feedback that you did with the Gears Highbusters DLC and take the 4 years from Gears 5, so 2019, come out in 2023 with a amazing conclusion to the Gears, this like trilogy with Kate's story, whether you got to add ultimate abilities or whatever, but take it up to 11 and send the franchise out on a huge just like an amazing experience. Like end the series, or at least end that story on a good note, and have the multiplayer be great, and then start working on something brand new that's outside the Gears universe that you can, put out in a few years after that. That's kind of what I want them to do. I don't know about you, because you're more of a Gears fan. I mean, would you like the Gears to continue? Would you want them to work on something new? Because like I'm a little bit. I don't really care if Gears continues. So, like, I would much rather have the coalition work on something new, but I know you're a Gears fan, so where do you fall on that?
I think they should continue Gears, but sort of take off the training wheels, Stop worrying so much about upsetting the core fans and stuff. Like, I remember back in the day when they were talking about Gears 4 and Rod Ferguson was saying stuff like, oh, you have to be, he said something, I'm paraphrasing heavily here, but he said something like, you have to betray the fans to bring them something new or something. And then Gears 4 came out and it was like, hang on a sec, barely anything here is new, we've gone looped back around and got the locust back, basically. The only new thing was like robots that were kind of annoying to fight. So that whole sort of betray fans to bring something new, I don't feel that that's happened yet for Gears. So I think like I think what Hivebusters showed me was that Gears has a lot of potential as a universe to explore like the flora and fauna and the history of the planet. We know next to nothing about the world of Gears. It's almost weird how little we know about this universe. So there's like they often say things like, we do that on purpose, so we can play around with it and stuff. But it's almost, to me, it feels like they're like leaving it vague on purpose because they're still scared of taking that leap, which might offend the core fans or whatever. I think if Gears is going to grow, they need to really stop worrying about that. Try something new. Double down on things like Jack's RPG mechanics. Double down on the ultimates and stuff like that. Bring them to multiplayer. Maybe even like go beyond just having skins and go full, class-based, team-based modes. Keep the hardcore wall bouncing for the core fans, but then try like something radically different for the casual players. Make it free to play. Go for episodic story content, whatever. I think Gears has tons of potential, and Hivebusters kind of prove that to me. So no, I don't want Gears to go away. I know people constantly call for that because they can't see Gears ever elevating up to that level. But that's why we're not game developers. It's their job. So it's their job to find that elevation, and I think they can do it. Like Hivebusters is like a glimpse at that.
Mm.
So I'd like to see them go all out and try to elevate Gears before giving up on moving on or whatever. But clearly, the Coalition's a monstrously talented studio, and you know, with the right sort of, I don't know, gumption, like I think they can do some really tremendously cool things.
Yeah.
But we'll have to wait and see.
Well, if you got Game Pass Ultimate, if you're just looking for something really cool to play, make sure you check out the Gears 5 Hivebusters DLC. I think it's on par, if not better, than the main campaign. So yeah, check that out. Trey Duke says, "Do you think devs make ghost accounts and get on here to ask questions and see what we think?" I've actually never thought about that, and maybe if we were a bigger podcast, I don't know. I know a lot of people make sock accounts, ghost accounts, to troll other people around the internet. And I would assure maybe there are some developers who do that, but I just can't imagine somebody asking, like, a developer wants to get my and Jez's input on something and then has to go all the trouble to make a ghost account or a sock account to ask a question here on the podcast. You know what I mean?
We know that some Microsoft people do listen to the show, and you know, we appreciate that.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's like Microsoft conducts massive scale research, and like we're just like a couple of people, you know.
Yeah, we're a bunch of nobodies, basically. So,
yeah.
which
like,
I was gonna say we're gonna talk about that survey that Microsoft conducted recently, right? That's
Microsoft likes their surveys.
They sure do. They
like
like their
surveys.
data-driven information, because they make a lot of their decisions of what they do based on data. You know, how many people are using this? How many people have played this? Oh, only 1% of the user base is using Snap. Get rid of it. You know what I mean? Like, they make very heavily data-driven decisions, sometimes to their detriment, though. You know, because sometimes
I think we've talked about this before. Like, I personally think data only gets you so far, because you know, people often don't know what they want. You know,
that's true.
And if there's a meme skewing the data, you know, you can end up with bad data. Like the problem with people is they're faulty at knowing their own opinions sometimes. You know, especially en masse in a big group. So I think data can only get you so far. So yeah, I don't know.
Cold Eastwood said, and shout out to my good buddy Cold Eastwood, amazing video yesterday, buddy. He says, "I wanted to ask Jez about Uprising, but I found him here, talking games with Rand." So what is this Uprising game, Jez? I saw a lot of people talking about it today, but I actually didn't check it out before we started the show. Do you know anything about it?
Uprising. I think some people just atted me about that. I personally don't know. Like, literally today was the first time I'd ever heard about it. I looked through some concept art of it. It looks nice, but I literally don't know anything about it.
Well, somebody at Jazz with like a trailer or information about Uprising so we can talk about it, because I didn't see it before. I saw somebody mention it, but I didn't check it out before we started the show. So
okay, so it's a Xbox Series X and Windows 10 exclusive.
Oh, an exclusive, huh?
S and X timed exclusive, I guess. I guess Microsoft is money hats in it. There is a trailer. By a dev called Water Rats. Interesting dev name. Oh no, it's not a trailer. It's just a teaser. It's just got the name. There doesn't seem to be any information about it yet, besides the fact that it's only been announced for Xbox and Windows 10 so far. Made with the Unreal Engine. Don't know anything about it.
Interesting. Okay. We'll keep a watch on that game. Trey Deuce also asks, "Hey, you couldn't pay me to play the Gears multiplayer," in response to like, "Hey, it being free." Some people just will never like the Gears multiplayer style. I'm not into it anymore, and I'm sure a lot of people aren't into it. And that's the thing. It's like I don't think you're going to see a resurgence in Gears multiplayer just even by making it free. Where like something like Halo, a first-person shooter, which still dominates the market for the most part, you can essentially have an influx of people. Well, we'll see with Halo Infinite, Maybe there isn't.
Yeah, man.
Maybe nobody wants to play Halo even if it was free to play. So we'll see how that goes.
You have to look at what's that game called? Is it Rogue? The
Rogue Company.
third Rogue Company, yeah. That third person sort of team based action game that does pretty well as a free to play game. And
Oh,
like I know it doesn't have wall bouncing and stuff like that, but I think like Gears could easily translate to a more casual audience that maybe is more accessible, not casual necessarily, but like more accessible, and you don't have to learn wall bouncing because like what other game has that really? I think like there's potential for them to pivot to something like that, and then keep the wall bouncing as a mode, like call it hardcore or whatever, for the fans who want to
that's
keep that
a
experience.
interesting
Because
comparison.
those yeah, I mean those hardcore fans are the only people who are playing at that level anyway. So just call it hardcore, and they can have that experience, and then chase like an Overwatch like experience for a casual audience, or chase like a Rogue Company like experience for that sort of broader audience. I think there's tons of potential.
Yeah.
You know,
No, I mean,
I,
Rogue Company is a very interesting comparison because it is third person. The movement isn't like so
not very
different than
geared.
Gears. But I mean, it's different than Gears, but it's not like completely different where it's super fast like Uncharted. And it is a lot of
Yeah,
fun to play. So yeah, you might be onto something there. Face wants to know: is there such a positive feedback from the DualSense controller that Xbox is asking for feedback to see if Xbox players want those features? Well, obviously, we'll be talking about that when we get to that topic. I think
yeah, we
Microsoft
do have to have
probably was more. I think when they were coming up with the new controllers, there probably was a pivot moment where they talked about, hey, well, we could either do one, have all of our controllers work back and forward, where you can use the new controller on the Xbox One or bring the Xbox One controller forward, but maybe if we do that, then we can't really have these new features, right? What would be better for our user base? And I would imagine they talked about adding new features like haptic feedback and all those things, and it was just like they felt that for them it was better for to kind of keep the controllers the same so that it would be backwards and forwards compatible. But if the
yeah.
DualSense is if people really enjoy the technology, who's to say Microsoft couldn't put it in a Elite Series 3? We know Microsoft. Well, we're kind of talking about it now, but we'll get to it later. That's kind of like a preview of it. Sin Vendetta says, "Hey Rand, just curious, when you played Sekiro, when did the combat finally click for you?" I think it was around the Genshiro fight was when it really clicked, because I actually ended up beating him pretty fast. And I know that's what people call like a skill check in the game, where like, okay, you've gotten this far, but now we need to know that like we need you to know that to finish this game, you need to master the parry system. And that was the fight that really it all kind of slid in and clicked together, where I just became like a parry master, and I understood what they wanted from me in the combat. So it was around the Genshiro fight where it clicked. So. Alexander Dark says, "Hey guys, great show so far. Have you heard the recent rumors about Xbox talking to Koei Tecmo about a possible acquisition?" Jez, have you heard any rumors about Koei Tecmo?
I've heard the rumors on Twitter, but I've not heard anything from sources and stuff. I think we might have talked about this on a previous show.
We did. There was
this has been a rumor that's
the Koei
going around
Tecmo
for a while.
president came out and said that Microsoft approached them. This is when that report came out that said Microsoft
yeah.
was looking at acquiring developers in Japan. You remember that? I believe
Yeah.
Bloomberg reported it, that big-time Japanese developers and small ones were approached by Microsoft, and Koei Tecmo president did say that Microsoft approached him about a partnership, but he wants to see them really kind of still go into the Japanese market before he would consider doing it. I don't think it would be an acquisition. It would just be more of a partnership. But then remember, Phil Spencer came out and then said, yeah, I don't really think we're on street corners in Japan handing out our business cards. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He said he wasn't aware of any of that stuff. So who do you believe? I mean, you have the president of Koei Tecmo saying that there was a partnership discussed. I don't think he's lying. But it's interesting because people always love to talk about these acquisitions, and I do think Microsoft will acquire more studios. I just think that we need to wait and before the Bethesda acquisition goes through before they acquire somebody else.
What
Chaos
do you
might.
think about Koei Tecmo as an acquisition? Theoretical one.
What do they really make? Really?
They make the Dynasty Warriors games. They do some anime sort of games. But they're most famous for Dynasty Warriors, you know, that style of game. They made Dynasty Warriors, right?
Yes, I know. I played Dynasty Warriors. Dynasty? I played Dynasty Warriors. What is Dynasty Warriors?
Dynasty.
Dynasty, yes. What is Dynasty Warriors? I've never heard of such a thing.
Oh my god, you're Americans screwing up my language. I get to say how Dynasty. It's Dynasty, for God's sake. Okay, they notable games published. Altelia, Dead or Alive, Dynasty Warriors, Fatal Frame, Ninja Gaiden.
I mean, then the Ninja Gaiden
Samurai
series
Warriors.
People love.
Neo.
I mean,
Fire
people
Emblem
love
Warriors.
Neo.
So those are the games they've published. I don't know if they necessarily own them all, but they're a pretty damn huge company. 1,757 employees with several divisions. They own books. There's Koei Tecmo Books, Koei Tecmo Capital, Koei Tecmo Music. So they're a pretty diverse company, and it comes back to, I think we talked about this with Sega. Like, does Microsoft really want to be does Microsoft really want to buy a business that's that diverse? So it sounds to me like maybe it like you say, it would have been more of a partnership, Game Pass sort of thing. I don't know.
Maybe to get Neo on, Neo 1 and 2 on the Xbox through Game Pass or something like that, right?
Yeah, something like that. I don't know. I can't see Microsoft wanting to own Koei Tecmo Books under any circumstance.
Yeah, that's kind of like the Sega thing. I know a lot of people want Microsoft to buy Sega or look into it, but like Sega has other parts of their business that have really nothing to do with the console business that, like, if Microsoft purchased, they'd have to like get rid of. And so it's like the Sega Sammy part of the business and things like that. So it's just, and honestly, is like when you look at Japanese publishers and you were like, which one would you want to buy? Like, let's just lay the cards on the table. You could buy any Japanese publisher or even a Japanese developer, but you can only get one. Which one would you get? I'm sorry, but Sega's not the one I would pick. They're definitely not. You know who I would pick? It would be one or I have two publishers in mind. I would either buy Capcom, because they have a bunch of great developers and a bunch of high-profile IP. Street Fighter, which Microsoft needs a fighting game studio, whether it's Killer Instinct or continue Street Fighter. They got Dino Crisis. They got Resident Evil. I mean, they have well-known IP. And they have Monster Hunter, which is freaking huge across the world, right? And the other publisher I would be is Square Enix. They also have a lot of high-profile IP. They even have Western studios that do Deus Ex and Marvel Avengers, all that stuff, right? Like, Sega doesn't even come... Like, I know a lot of people love Sega from, back in the day when they were making the Genesis and the Dreamcast, so there's a lot of nostalgic feelings for that. But when you compare, the big franchises that these publishers have, I don't think Sega compares to Capcom or Square. Am I wrong in that assessment, Jez? Would you want Sega over those other two, or would you want somebody else?
Oh, man. That's tough. I think, obviously Capcom. And I was just looking up Koei Tecmo a bit more. They're a publicly traded company, so
yeah, it's not
that just adds another layer of crazy, I guess. But yeah, I think Capcom, Square Enix are obvious. I mean, Square Enix publicly traded too. Is Capcom publicly traded? Man, I lose track of all this sort of stuff, but I once heard a industry rumor, that Microsoft and Capcom were very close to signing some kind of massive deal before Monster Hunter World blew up, and then it became financially difficult at that point. But those are obvious ones. But I think the interesting point is kind of what the Koei Tecmo guy said. where he said that he'd like to see Microsoft make more of an effort in Japan. And I presume that with any developer that is based in Japan right now, Microsoft's basically a nobody. You know, they are literally a nobody. People use Windows, they use Office, but nobody plays Xbox. Nobody uses the Microsoft Store. You know, they're literally nobody. So until if you were a company, and if you were an independent publisher, and unless you were particularly desperate for a quick exit to sell your business at the expense of your employees, would you trust that Microsoft wouldn't basically shut you down after a couple of years when it gives up its latest attempt to crack Japan? Sort of like a chicken and egg scenario, where like no Japanese developers trust Microsoft to actually make the effort, and Microsoft can't make the effort without getting Japanese developers. So I think there needs to be like some kind of significant effort on Microsoft's part to prove that it is interested and invested in the Japanese market. And until then, I think they're always going to struggle. We've had like a lot of positive change. Like we got Dragon Quest, which is awesome, and we got all the Yakuza games, which is awesome. But you know, there's still a huge amount of games that, you know, your Persona and which are on it. They're not on Xbox arbitrarily. It's not like Sony's paid them to be off Xbox. It's just an arbitrary thing. And like Square Enix has got that pretty pervasive Final Fantasy deal with Sony. And if Microsoft had a bigger presence in Japan, I don't think those kind of exclusivity deals in Japanese games, I don't think they'd be easier to, you know, materialize if Microsoft had more clout. So, you know, it's part of a bigger discussion about whether Microsoft should go all in on Japan, but you know, will they? Realistically, I don't know.
Yeah, that's the discussion there. Chaos Might says, "Hey, I'm waiting on getting my Series X before playing Gears for the first time. I finished 1 to 4 last August through October for the first time. Well, you'll enjoy Hive Busters whenever you get to play it." Humjump says, "More effort in Japan. What else can they do?" Well, Jess kind of really just explained it there. CYV Studio says, "Happy New Year's, guys. How about Namco Entertainment," which we just talked about. RA89 says, "I believe Xbox has a golden chance of entering Japan now that Japan fans are clearly mad with Sony because how they have been treated lately by them." If you've seen the sales figures for PlayStation 5, you can definitely see there is some truth to that. Like, Sony's not focused on Japan as they used to. I mean, that's clear as day. And the Switch rules Japan. And then even more than the Switch, mobile rules Japan. Microsoft, if we switch it to the Microsoft perspective of how they can make an inroads in Japan, it's clearly through xCloud and Game Pass. But to hit that market, you need Japanese games. And that's the thing Microsoft currently doesn't have. They don't have, they don't have a Japanese studio making Japanese games for that market. I mean, they do, well, they don't own, what's the Japanese studio they got from the Bethesda? Tango Gameworks, right? But even Tango Gameworks didn't really make Japanese games. They still made more a Western style horror games with, well, Ghostwire Tokyo looks more like a Japanese style game than Evil Within 2 and Evil Within 1 was. But if you're going to try to take over or at least make inroads to the Japanese market, you need games that the Japanese market wants to play. And you have the delivery system with xCloud and Game Pass. It's just you need the Japanese games that the market wants. Like, you would need the Neos and the Personas, and you would need them day one. Like, having them a year later or 2 years later is not going to do anything for you. So you would have
There's also something really interesting happening with Sony and censorship when it comes to Japanese games. Like, historically, Sony was like, they didn't censor games too aggressively, but since they've become more American oriented, they've started censoring games a lot more, and a lot of people are annoyed about that. Ironically, out of all this, it's the supposedly child-friendly Nintendo Switch which isn't censoring any games. I remember seeing that, like, that Gal Gun game um, which is a bit dodgy, a bit of a dodgy game there. That game was coming for Xbox, but presumably Microsoft demanded certain levels of censorship that made the game completely different or whatever. And now it's not coming to Xbox, but it's still on Switch on all of its, you know, I don't know what you call it, suggestive glory. so it's no wonder to me that Switch is dominating certain fan bases when it
Yeah.
comes to that stuff.
I mean, I'm not surprised Microsoft. I was kind of shocked they were going to allow the Galgun game on Xbox to begin with, and then I wasn't
Yeah.
surprised whatsoever when they were like, "Yeah, we can't have the game on Xbox." I am really surprised though that Nintendo doesn't like is just going to allow that. Like you would think Nintendo is the platform that has probably the the lowest age group, or at least like a lot of minors on the system, and like it's surprisingly that game is going to release uncensored on the Switch, and PlayStation and Xbox are like, no thanks, you know.
Yeah, it's completely uncensored. Like I'm looking at the
It's
Nintendo store right now. It's
yeah,
hilarious. And there's loads of these sort of I don't know, suggestive, not necessarily pornographic, but suggestive games that are on Switch that aren't on Xbox or PlayStation. Like Nintendo just doesn't care. They're just like bring it all in, kind of like Steam. You can get like basically Steam doesn't censor anything either,
yeah.
unless it's like discriminatory or whatever. But like the slightly suggestive, sexy content, they don't censor it at all. It's funny. It's interesting.
But if you want to make inroads in Japan, you got to have those games, and they got to be uncensored. I mean, that's just kind of the way it is. Trade Duke says it's he's trying to tell me how to say Genshi or Genichiro. It's Genichiro. Rand, say it right. Amador809 says, Hello Rand, question. Any rumors you know about PlayStation exclusives incoming and also acquisitions from PlayStation? Bluepoint is already a done deal. I mean, people have been talking about the Bluepoint one like it's already a done deal for a long time, and maybe it is. I mean, they're a private company. You don't necessarily have to announce it. There was talks that PlayStation wanted to see what they could do with Demon Souls before they fully acquired them, and Demon Souls seems like it's done pretty well, so I wouldn't be surprised if PlayStation bought Bluepoint. I wouldn't be surprised if PlayStation ended up buying House Marquee at some point. They're probably waiting to see how Returnal's going to do, and if Returnal does well critically, commercially, maybe then Sony buys them, gives them a bigger budget to make a bigger game. But I don't know, everybody loves talking acquisitions. Microsoft, Bethesda, Nintendo just bought a developer. Jez, you see that?
Yeah, who did they buy? I can't remember them.
They bought like Night Drive
Developers
Studio,
of Luigi.
Yeah, the Luigi's Mansion. I think it was a Canadian developer or something.
Sweet.
But yeah, so PlayStation, I'm sure they have studios that they're eyeing. PlayStation likes to, before they buy a studio, they want to partner with them and before they do it. Like, it's not, I guess like you could look at like Microsoft where, well, no, they worked with Playground for so long, so that makes sense. Even when they bought Undead Labs, they'd work with them twice in State of Decay 2. Ninja Theory was maybe the one where it was like, they hadn't worked with them in a bit. Ninja Theory did Heavenly Sword for PlayStation, and then they did what was the other game that was really good? I'm blanking on right now. Where you kind of play as a dude with the tail in the post-apocalyptic future.
Sonic.
No, not Sonic. I'm blanking on the name right now. God, the game was so. Oh, and Slave Odyssey to the West, right? And then they did Hellblade, which came out first on PlayStation, and then Microsoft purchased them, and they hadn't worked with them since Kung Fu Chaos, which was the original Xbox. Obsidian, remember like Obsidian had to go to their whole Kickstarter thing because Microsoft canceled their Xbox game and put them in a lot of trouble, and they hadn't really worked with them. So Sony, what I'm saying is Sony likes to work with their studios second party wise before they, buy them. That's what happened with Insomniac and all the other ones. So we'll see. I'm sure Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo all have their eyes, and then even like something like Google and Facebook and Amazon, right? I'm sure they have also eyes on studios that they'd want to buy. I mean, can you imagine if if Bethesda was bought by Google, Jez? How that would have panned out? That would be like a
Yeah,
nightmare scenario, wouldn't it?
I'd be melting down, man. I'd be like, no, no,
Yeah.
no,
Reverse World
no.
says once Bethesda deal goes through, even if the games aren't not exclusive, Xbox better market those games as if the PlayStation version doesn't exist. You know, it would be easier just not to have a PlayStation version. Instead
Yeah,
of like
wouldn't
marketing
it?
the Xbox version, it would just be the easiest way to be like the only place you can play these Bethesda games are on Xbox, whether it's on PC, mobile, or on the console. That's the only place you can get them. Instead of just marketing it like the PlayStation version doesn't exist, just don't have a PlayStation version. And Chris R
That would make
says
things simpler, wouldn't it?
it would. It would. Chris R says, "Is it worth waiting for a new version of Series X that has the launch kinks worked out?" So you know what? Since you're asking about that, let's talk about this new Xbox console, shall we, Jez?
Yeah. Might as
Did
well.
you see all the talk on Twitter and social media when? Did you kind of like your ears perk up and be like, "New Xbox console? What's going on here?" Because you know this is something you would normally leak. You know?
I did, yeah. I did get a couple of DMs about it, but I think it all went down. I was still sort of like not working or whatever. But yeah, I got a couple of DMs about it, and people were like, "Oh my god, is there a new console?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" And then basically, long story short, this whole rumor spawned from a trademark filing for the Xbox Series XS. But no,
What a name!
there isn't a new.
What a name!
There is no new console coming this year. I don't know. I don't know how that picked up so much steam, but all that was Microsoft trademarking the name of the platform, really. Because whenever they write a press release, they write it like Microsoft X dash S, or they use that little line character. I don't know what it's called.
Yeah, I don't know what it's called either, but I use it in my thumbnails.
Yeah, it's I don't know what it's called, but in scenarios where you can't use that little line, and Google actually doesn't even, like, for SEO reasons, Google doesn't even recognize that as a character. They just see that as a space. So I'm guessing, like, for whatever technical reason, when they're not using that little line, maybe they can't use it in certain places for some reason. Maybe like some retailers just like, you can't use that line, we don't like it, or something dumb like that. That's all this is. It's just that. It's not a new console. It's not a handheld. It's not a slim Xbox Series X or a discless Xbox Series X. It's just some random technical trademark.
People call it the vertical pipe. Pipe.
Vertical.
Yeah.
Is that what it's called?
And that's what a few people are saying. Yeah, it's called pipe. Pipe character, vertical pipe. Yeah, apparently that line is called a pipe, which I've never heard of until today.
Well, you know, our audience are smart people, so learn something new every day.
Anyways, yeah, so it's interesting because I don't know how it blew up. Like I think it's clear as day that the XS trademark is, like Jess says, just trademarking when they use those in Xbox wire posts or when they use it in like TV commercials, right? Stuff like that. And then I don't understand the idea that, this, like I saw people saying this could be a discless Xbox Series X, but it's like, why? Why would you call it an XS? Like, you have a console called the X, you have a console called the S. Why would you combine those two to call it the XS? Like, if they ever were to do a digital version of a Series X, it would just be called the Xbox Series X all digital version. Like, we've already seen that with the Xbox One S. There's precedent for that. Microsoft spent a ton of money educating consumers on what the X is versus what the S is. They're not suddenly now going to combine it and be like, hey guys, this is the XS. Well, what is the XS now? No, it would just be X is the, this is the X, this is the X all digital edition, and the S is only all digital, so there's no need to even say it. Like, sometimes I don't think people think. They don't think logically about these things. They just see that and they're like, new console, and then I get hit up with a whole bunch of stuff. So I wake up And I have DMs that are like new console leak, and I'm sitting there like, what? There's a new console that leaked out. Why didn't Jez tell me this? Because Jez Brad Sams leaked the whole Scorpio. What was it? Scorpio and Lockhart? No, not Anaconda and Lockhart. This is just like, yeah, like I don't know what. It's just a trademark. Like we won't start. When do you? Assuming this generation lasts as long as the last one, which was 7 years, right? When do you think you would start hearing about next gen consoles? It would be about 2 years before. You leaked it in 2018, right? Anaconda and Lockhart. It'd be about 2 years. So you're looking at like
actually we actually had was it Scarlet?
Zach
Bowden actually had the Scarlet code name, like even before then, like 2016 or 2017. So who knows? It's always fun and murky in the world of Microsoft leakage. Leakage. I don't like that word. Maybe I'm not gonna call it that again. Microsoft leaks. I don't know. I can't stop thinking of leakage now. Leakage. But anyway, leakage. It sounds a bit dodgy.
Midway Monster says, I can't believe I'm using a super chat for this, but it is / or for word / AOA keyboard is what he says. I'm gonna assume the line / I guess.
Backslash. But isn't that the diagonal slash? We're talking about the
word / I don't know. That's what he says.
Oh, I don't know. Thanks for that super chat anyway. But man, I lost my trail of thought now. We're talking about leakage. Yeah, there's no new console. That's it.
Sorry to disappoint everybody. No new console. So I mean, like so in regards to that question about someone saying wait for a new Xbox Series X that works out the kinks, there isn't a new Xbox Series X that works out the kinks. I know a lot of people see like the Digital Foundry comparisons where games maybe not as running as well as the PS5s. That has nothing to do with any of necessarily the hardware issue. That has to do with more of like the software stuff within it. So there isn't like some brand new Xbox version coming out this year that's better.
No.
That's just, yeah. You might, give it 3 years and maybe there's a slim version of the Xbox Series X. There's a lot you could do to slim that down. Prices, components come down cheaper. You make it smaller. I'm assuming PlayStation would have the same, where they have a PS5 Slim. I mean, they do it every generation. So, yes, at some point there will be a slim console, but I don't think there's going to be Xbox Series X Revision 2 or Revision 1 that's better. I don't know. That's just me. I mean, I don't know for sure, but like I'm pretty I'm like 99% positive the trademark is just for the XS and not a new console. But moving on from that, Jez, the Xbox survey, because we did have a super chat about this before. Microsoft was sending out surveys to users who had bought the Xbox Series X, which they do this quite a bit. I never get surveys. I guess Microsoft doesn't care what I think about stuff. And they asked them basic questions like, what do you think about the console? Do you feel it's next gen? But the one that got a lot of the press was, hey, are you aware of the PlayStation controller and would you want that tech essentially in the Xbox controller? And this has kind of led people to believe that Microsoft might be putting haptic feedback and adaptive triggers in their next controller. New generation, 6 years from now, maybe it's time to put that tech in there. But I'm going to go out on a limb and say they're going to include haptic feedback and some of that stuff in the Elite Series 3. I think they were probably thinking about it before. They've seen the positive word of mouth that the DualSense have gotten. It's one of the reasons why a lot of people say the PS5 is a next-gen machine, or at least feels more next-gen than the Xbox does, because the controller is different. And, I've said my piece about the DualSense. The first time I played Astrobot, I thought it was a revolution. I thought the controller was absolutely amazing. And it's definitely the best controller Sony's ever made by far. But every game I played since then, like whether it's Spider-Man Miles Morales or Demon's Souls or The Pathless, I'm less and less impressed by the controller. I love the haptic feedback, and I personally, when I say that, I personally would love to see haptic feedback come to Xbox. I'm not really a big fan of the adaptive controller, or the adaptive triggers. So I don't know if that's because developers aren't too they don't have everything or wrap their minds around what the controller can do, whereas Astro's Playroom was like a demo for the controller, which is why I felt so revolutionary. And then maybe give it a year or 2 years from now, and games are really popping off with the DualSense, or maybe developers don't use them. But I honestly do think Microsoft is surveying the land and seeing what their customers think, and I think they will include haptic feedback at least in a Series 3. What do you think, Jez?
No.
No, you're going to go no, huh?
If they do haptic feedback, it won't be in the Elite. It'll just be on everything, because the only way that they can get developers to use that stuff is if everybody has it. And
So
I think
so how are they going to put it in the regular controller?
Well, I'll have to release a new one.
But then what about all the people who have the regular new controller and it doesn't have...
We get screwed! Or player 2 gets screwed. Like, you can pass off their other controller on your little brother or sister or whatever. And then, like, you buy the shiny new, $10 more expensive one with haptics. Because that won't be something that's restricted to the Elite. If they do it, they'll do it in a... like the Xbox One 2013 controller went through like how many revisions? 4 revisions.
I mean, it went through quite a bit of different revisions.
Yeah. So I wouldn't be surprised if the next generation or the next generation of Xbox controller, I wouldn't be surprised if it just includes haptics and like it just decides this is the necessary next step for controller human computer interfacing. And then Microsoft releases drivers for PC, and then PC developers can get it as well, and on Windows and on all that sort of stuff. And then you get PC games with it, Xbox games with it, and that just becomes the norm. I wouldn't be surprised if that's something that Microsoft's tabling right now. It wouldn't be something that they restrict just to the Elite. They'd make a cheaper version of it. I mean, if they do another Elite,
but here's the thing with the Elite, right? If we assume they're doing a Series 3, they're going to have something that differentiates itself from the Series 2, right?
It'll have an internal battery.
Well, Series 2 already has an internal battery.
It'll just be like the same, but better.
So I'm saying the Series 3 would have to have something new to differentiate itself from the Series 2 that would get people to spend $150 on it. And what would be...
It'd have the haptics.
Well, yeah, that's my thing. The Series 3 would have the haptics, which would be the reason to get it, and the $150.
But I mean, it'd have like the regular controllers will have the haptics, and the Series 3 will have the haptics, and the charge dock, and the paddles, and the swappable thumbsticks, and God knows what else.
Okay, so you think if I'm understanding you correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong here, you think at some point, let's say in a year or 2 years from now, Microsoft does a revision for the Xbox Series XS controller, and in that revision of the controller, it comes with haptic feedback, triggers and motors in the grips, and maybe whatever they do for the triggers, basically admitting that they had it wrong the first time when they released the controller with the console. Wouldn't that be going back on wouldn't that be admitting that they were wrong if they're then including it in all Xbox controllers moving forward? Or am I thinking too deep about that?
That'd be them admitting that they didn't know how good it was, because it's not like Microsoft a psychic. I mean, they probably had an idea that Sony had some form of haptic feedback in their controller, but they probably didn't realize how much it would resonate with the users and with game devs, I actually didn't try the haptic feedback, but I did get to hold the PlayStation 5 controller just before Christmas, and it's quite clear how much better it is than the PS4 controller. Like just from holding it.
I mean, that's the thing. It's like I always respect other people's opinions, and people say, "Hey, the PS4 DualSense is great" or whatever, and I'm always like, "Yeah, cool." Like, I respect your opinion, but I've personally always felt that the PlayStation controllers, PS3, PS4, have basically been Fisher Price toys. Like they don't feel good in my hands. They feel cheap. And it wasn't until the DualSense where I finally felt like, now this is a controller. This doesn't feel cheap. This feels very premium. It's great to the hold. It's great to use. And I feel like they really stepped it up. And it's like, I see that all the time. Like, oh, the PS4 DualSense is better. And in my mind, I'm like, the PS4 DualSense is a Fisher Price toy. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Maybe that's just my personal feeling. And I'm sure that will probably piss off some PlayStation fans we have in the chat. But I don't know, Jez. Like, I would like haptics, but I just can't see Microsoft like revising the whole controller line to include haptic feedback on every controller going forward. That just screams like very weird PR. Because then you'd have,
I don't think so.
I don't know.
Well, that's why they're surveying. You know, like it could be that like I don't know, 70% of people replied and said, "I've never heard of it, don't care," and then the other people just been like, "Oh yeah, don't care," you know. But if tons of people were like, "Yeah, I'm kind of salty about this," you know, because you got to remember, Microsoft's controller sales aren't in Xbox; they're on Windows. Like the Microsoft controller is the de facto controller for all PC gaming. So
well,
like
there'd be some people that would disagree with you and say that the PS4 controller is the de facto controller for PC gaming.
Well, I don't know. I think the sales don't line up with that. I mean, Steam, I'm pretty sure I saw in the Steam hardware survey or somewhere that it's the Xbox controller, and that's why Microsoft doesn't let third parties make wireless Xbox controllers because they want the monopoly on that because it makes them a hell of a lot of money. That's why, like your Hyperkin Duke has a wire. That's why your Razer Kaiju or whatever that controller's called, or Wolverine controller, I can't remember what it's called. That's why that has a wire. It's because Microsoft doesn't let third-party devs use the wireless protocol because it makes too much money on it on PC. I could be wrong about that, but I'm sure I heard that somewhere at some point. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Even still, they've got a responsibility to make that controller good for Windows users. And if Windows users and PC developers on Windows and stuff are kind of like, well, we kind of want to start using these APIs on PC, then they do, and then PC gamers start buying PlayStation 5 controllers because the PC games have those features, then it kind of puts Microsoft in a weird position, doesn't it? At some point, you kind of have to admit, oh yeah, we're wrong, and then try and line up the APIs so like developers can use those features with your own controllers. I think they'll do it. I think the PlayStation 5 haptics will be popular enough that they just admit that it was, you know, cool enough to copy it. You know, it's not like there's no precedent for them copying each other. Like PlayStation Trophies is a direct copy of near enough direct copy of Xbox achievements. Steam copied Xbox achievements. Even World of Warcraft copied Xbox achievements. So there's plenty give and take over the years between the two companies. And clearly Sony got it completely right with the haptics. I was super skeptical about it. I was thinking like, oh, it's just going to be like rumble triggers. No one's going to use it. Blah blah blah. And like, it remains to be seen if third-party devs use it. But if every controller had haptics that are as good as Sony's, more devs would use it, and then you know it'd be fun. Then that's the point of gaming, right?
Yeah.
Advance the immersion, advance the fun, and all that good stuff. So I think they'll do it. I personally think they'll do it.
All right, fair enough. Saji Caesar says Jez says Lego game, and Ryan says Fisher Price toy. Yeah.
It just shows what we had as kids, right?
Yep.
Did you have Fisher Price toys?
I mean, I probably did as a kid, yeah. So,
what did they make Fisher Price? I can't even remember.
I don't really remember either. But you were in the news before the year went out, Jez. People were see. It's funny because whenever you say something, people pay attention. Whenever I say something, nobody cares. I'm a nobody. Right?
Oh, come on.
People love you. They follow you because they're like, Jez knows what he's talking about. So you tweeted out, and you know, I don't know if I can find your tweet because you tweet a lot. You know, if you follow Jez on Twitter, which you should, you have 85,000 tweets, by the way. So that's a lot of tweets, Jez. Yeah. You tweet a lot
of tweets.
Let me see. Well, you know what? Let me see if I can find it. But you basically tweeted out that you think there's some truth to the rumors that Ubisoft Plus or Uplay Plus or whatever is going to be joining Xbox Game Pass in 2021. Would you like to expound upon that, and we can talk a little bit about it, or what was the whole reasoning behind you tweeting that out?
I've heard like I started getting DMs about it. So like there was some rumor that Uplay Plus would join Game Pass. I can't remember exactly where it came from, but I started getting a lot of DMs about it, like more DMs than usual. So I thought I would, just put out there what I'd heard. And I'd heard that yeah, there had been some kind of talk about a more pervasive partnership between Ubisoft and Microsoft for Game Pass. And not just Ubisoft either, like other publishers as well. Like this isn't like, but it's not as revelatory. Is that a word? It's not as much of a revelation as you might think, because like Microsoft, they didn't just get EA Play and think we're going to stop there. Of course not. They're all in on trying to get all publishers to bring their games to Game Pass. Similarly to how like Netflix will do a deal with like publishers and IP holders for like all of their content and stuff like that. So it's not as huge of a revelation as you might think, because it's not just Ubisoft either. I've heard they've been talking to basically every major publisher. It's just EA is the first one that bit. EA is the first deal they locked down. So I would not be surprised if that we see, like, not necessarily Uplay Plus, because that's a different service
Yeah,
entirely.
I
But I
think
wouldn't be surprised if sorry, go on.
Well, I was just gonna say, I think the idea, like, because Uplay Plus currently exists on the PC market, right? And it's $15 a month, and it includes Ubisoft games day one. I don't think that's gonna happen. If it does come to Xbox, I don't think you're gonna see Ubisoft games day one in the Game Pass. That's pretty much what you're
Oh
gonna
no,
say,
no,
right?
no. Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. But I think like Ubisoft, I think it's feasible that Ubisoft has something like, Ubisoft Vault, and they put like their older games in that vault, and that's what Game Pass gets. Basically, how EA Play works.
Do you think
It's not like EA Play is giving you EA games on day one. You're getting the older games, and that aren't necessarily selling anymore, but they can monetize through Game Pass, and Game Pass is vast and rapidly growing audience. So that's ultimately what I was thinking,
do you
and that's
think
ultimately what I heard.
do you think that this, say they call it Ubisoft Plus or whatever they want to call it, do you think the service would have to come separately to the console before it joins Game Pass? Because like you look at it right now, EA Access is it, even though it's included in Game Pass Ultimate, it's still like a separate thing. Like when you go to your My Games and app, it's like Xbox Game Pass, EA Access, right? And I'm pretty sure that you can still subscribe to EA's Access separately, even if like you don't,
Yeah,
right? So I would imagine
okay.
if they were to do this, that they would have to bring this Ubisoft service to the console first
Yeah,
before putting it into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, right?
yeah. I mean, there'd have to be like some kind of Ubisoft equivalent to EA Plays Vault and stuff like that. And that there's even a chance that as part of the EA Play deal, maybe EA were like, well, we want like a year of exclusivity as the only third party publisher that has this kind of deal. There's all sorts of variables that could have gone into the deal with EA. We just don't know. We don't have those documents that we can make those analyses. But I do know that they were in talks with Ubisoft and other publishers about what they could bring to Game Pass potentially. And I know that's Microsoft's mentality. Is like they got EA Play, and they're not just going to sit there and think we're going to stop there. They want all the publishers to put their stuff into Game Pass, and Ubisoft already has some games in Game Pass, I believe. So, or they have in the past, I don't know, but yeah, it's not that big of a revelation. But I do think we'll see more cool stuff for Game Pass throughout the year, especially considering the fact that Microsoft doesn't necessarily have a huge slate of games probably coming next year. So I think Game Pass deals will be doing some of the heavy lifting to sell to the the normie audience, and stuff like that. Um, And those are the kind of announcements you want to be able to make to capture that audience as you wait for your Halos and your Hellblades and your heavy hitters, you know. So, yeah, that's what I think, buddy.
You know what's funny is that you said it on, like I was mentioning, you said it on Twitter and it became news. Like all these different websites come out and say Ubisoft to join Xbox Game Pass says, Insider or whatever, right? And everybody's like Jez Corden, Jez Corden, Jez Corden. He's so amazing, Jez Corden. But when little old Rand says it in a video like 3 days before you, nobody cares. Nobody cares.
You did?
I said it in the video because there was this thing where it was like 10 rumors or whatever, and like one of them was like Ubisoft would be coming to Game Pass, and I said don't discount this whatsoever, because I heard that there's a very strong possibility it's going to happen, and that they were in discussions even as late as like last year, and that I thought it would be hitting Game Pass fall of 2021. Like just a year after like EA did, where it's like that's kind of one of the big things that happens. And I said that, and then like nobody cares, and I'm not like out here begging for like notice or whatever. Like I don't really care. I just like making my videos.
You told me.
No, actually, no, I didn't tell you that.
I can't remember who told me.
I mean, it's been it's been a rumor for a while, but then you come out and say it, and all of a sudden like everyone's like, yep, it's happening, Jez Corden. I'm like, Randall Thor 19, chop liver once again. Nobody cares.
Well, dude, who wants to watch a 13?
Yeah, I guess that's true.
When you're a journalist, right, and you're sitting there looking at your schedule for the day, and you've got to write like however many articles or whatever. Do you want to watch a 30-minute video, or do you want to read a 13-second tweet?
I mean that is
it's nothing
true.
to do with who I am. It's the medium.
Even when some of our stuff gets picked up on Reset Era, right, where they like Jez Corden says this right on the podcast, I remember when we were like we said months and months before it happened, like Final Fantasy 16 is literally going to be a PS5 exclusive, right? Like both me and you had different sources telling us that, and we knew for a fact it was exclusive. Like they were just like Jez Corden says it's exclusive, and there's like nothing about Randall Thor 19, and I'm like, oh, like I see how it is. I see how it is. God damn it.
Oh, poor Rand.
Anyways, yeah. So like, I guess we'll transition to like 2021 in general for Xbox, right? I personally think the Ubisoft thing will happen at the end of the year. Do you think it will? Do you think this will be pulled off and it will be like the big addition for 2021 for Game Pass?
What, the year or the end of the year?
Well, just Xbox in 2021. So do you think Ubisoft being added to Game Pass will happen in 2021?
Potentially, yeah. I mean, there's all sorts of... I never want to say yeah definitively, because I haven't I'm not in the room. I'm not fly on the wall. I don't know what potential barriers there are to making that deal happen. I don't know if like EA is sitting there like, oh, we don't want Ubisoft games in there because like the people will be playing our games less. I don't know like the ins and outs of whether that could happen until it's happened. And like when it's happened, maybe I'll know and I'll be able to like, definitively say then. But I do, if I'm just going off a personal prediction, this is totally my own prediction, I would say, yeah, this year they will do some kind of deal with Ubisoft to bring those games in. I've heard about this for way too long that it would take much longer, but but sometimes business deals between companies get complicated. So don't come at me and get mad if it doesn't happen, because I ain't saying it's gonna happen, because no one can predict the future until it's happened.
That's true.
So maybe I'll know when it's happened. I can leak it or something. I don't know.
Yes,
but it hasn't happened. Yeah, it hasn't happened yet. So don't know yet. So we'll have to wait and see.
Rubber Knob says, lads, what's your thoughts on Xbox Design Labs selling designer consoles plus controllers this gen? # take my money. Because
I would love it if they did sell custom consoles, because that feels like they've missed a trick there a little bit, especially given how easily it is to like replace the shell on the console, right? It's just a cube, cuboid or whatever you want to call it. So you'd have to think that it'd be easier than replacing like something that was, I don't know, more abstract in its design or whatever. But at the same time, having like an assembly line that can like make different colored shells while manufacturing the consoles, like I don't know the logistics of that. Like it's probably pretty
Probably a lot harder than
difficult.
controllers.
Yeah, it probably is. So, like speaking of which, I actually skinned one of my controllers the other day. I put like not skinned, like I replaced the shell on it. I got a red shell for my Xbox Series XS controller, and you just take some screws apart, take some screws out, and then snap the plastic off, and then replace it. It's like super easy.
So when when you-
But when
when
you've got like
Xbox
I/O ports and shit, it's maybe a bit more complicated. I
when
don't know.
Xbox Design Labs comes back, because currently it's offline, do you think they'll just offer the new controller and a bunch of different like options for like how you want to customize it with colors and patterns and stuff? Do you think it'll just be that?
Yeah, I don't know if they'll offer the full blown console customization, especially given the fact that they barely got any stock at all right now. Um, but who knows? It's a cool to think about, and it'd be super annoying at the same time because it'd be like, oh wow, now I have to buy like another Xbox, and then what do I do with this one? Like if I want to get like a cool design on it or
See,
something.
they couldn't come back with Xbox Design Labs until like the stock was completely fixed for Series X and S. Because even now, I mean, it's still pretty hard to get systems. They kind of trickle out here and there, and Phil talked even recently, which we'll talk about his interview, where he basically said they're doing all they can. Like he called AMD, and Lisa Su was like, "I need more systems. Give me more systems. Make them faster." So like it'd be weird to like see the design lab come back up and it's like, here you can customize your Xbox Series X, but the wait is 5 months. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
we have no idea when the stock will be available. And Trey Duke says Game Pass members save more in Apex with EA access. That is true. You actually save money on the microtransactions with that stuff. So
Yeah.
um, yeah, what were we talking about? We were talking about Xbox in 2021. So, what games do you think from first party are going to be launching this year from Xbox? Like, obviously, we know Halo Infinite, and we're gonna go on a limb and say Halo Infinite will launch in 2021. It won't get delayed to 2022, right? We both agree on that. I would imagine.
Yeah, it'd be wild if it got delayed
Can you
further.
imagine if it got delayed to 2022? Oh
Man,
man.
you don't know what's gonna happen. Like, what if there's like, I don't even want to say it because I don't want to jinx the whole world. But what if there's like some super mutant variant of COVID
Oh
that turns
Jesus.
people into zombies or something, and like turns people into like Resident Evil bioweapons, and there's like a zombie apocalypse. I think Halo might get delayed in that scenario, but let's just hope that doesn't happen. Hey, I think like Halo, if there isn't a zombie apocalypse, I think Halo will most assuredly come out this year.
And when do you think it'll launch? My personal guess, November 15th, 2021, 20th anniversary of Halo.
Yeah, it makes sense, doesn't it?
Okay, so we know Halo. That's the one game we kind of know. Psychonauts 2, another game coming from Xbox's first party, even though it's multiplat. When do you think that game launches? Because Tim Schafer was recently on Ryan McCaffrey's Podcast Unlocked. He basically said they're working on the credits, which is basically to say, like, yeah, they're pretty much done with the game. Do you think it launches in the first half of the year? Do you think it launches the second half of the year?
Which game was that? Sorry,
Psychonauts 2.
Psychonauts 2. Psychonauts kind of strikes me as a summer game because that's the game. Like, well, again, it's sort of skewed because of COVID. Again, I was gonna say that's the kind of game you might want to release in the summer, because of all the kids off school. But they're gonna be off school anyway because of COVID. Maybe, I don't know. Um, it's weird because if the kids are like stuck at home because of COVID, maybe that's the game you release in the summer because then you capture that audience and the nostalgia audience at the same time. Because if they can't go outside because of COVID, maybe they can play Psychonauts instead. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I would release that like maybe towards the summer. That seems like a summery kind of game. I don't know why I think that. Like it just reminds me sort of Recall, sort of cartoony-ish sort of game. That came out towards the end of the summer, right?
Yeah, but I think I think it'll probably come out April or May. I don't think it'll be. I don't think it's a summer game personally. But I
Maybe
mean,
summer, isn't it?
those are two of the games that we know are coming out. Do you think any other surprises? Right, like because Phil's talked about how Bethesda's going to be important to 2021. Aaron Greenberg said there's surprises. Clearly unannounced games, whether it's from first party or deals. And we know there's like high profile indie games like The Ascent and Scorn, The Medium, which comes out in 20 days. Indie games like 12 Minutes, stuff like that. But I guess the question is, do you think Starfield will be coming in 2021? Wolfenstein 3, Arcane's game, is Everwild, could that slip into 2021? Could Forza Horizon 5? Like, what do you feel from their first party will be also releasing with Halo and Psychonauts 2 this year?
Well, didn't Jeff Grubb of VentureBeat fame say that Forza Horizon 5 is coming sooner than expected?
He did say that, yeah. He said we'd see it, I think, before Forza Motorsport. So you think that's a possibility, we see Forza Horizon 5 this year?
Yeah, I think it's possible. I mean, it's been 2 years since 4, right? That's typically the dev cycle for a Forza Horizon game.
Typically, but they might be doing something different this time. Work from home and everything like that, right? Maybe the game, like,
yeah,
and it would be 3 years if it comes out at the end of this year. It would be 3 years for Forza Horizon 5. So, it's definitely
weird
possible.
because, like, if you think like motorsports, most people agree motorsport's not coming this year, right?
Yeah.
You couldn't have Horizon and Motorsport launching in the same year. But so does that mean like in Horizon gets an even longer dev cycle? Like that's weird.
Well, what if it's possible that Motorsport launches this year, but as an early access title, like with flighting and Grounded was early access. I mean,
yeah, but that's Grounded. I don't think Microsoft would do early access for Forza. I really don't.
So you think Forza Motorsport would launch, like, even though they said they want to build it with the community in mind and get the feedback from it, you think?
All devs say that all the time about every game.
Right.
Every game's filled with the community.
Well, I mean, so go on a limb here and predict it. What do you think is coming out from first party besides Halo or Psychonauts this year?
Man, why do I always have to be the psychic one?
Well, I mean, I'll give my predictions too, but I'm just saying, just like people, like, here's the difference. When I say it, people don't pay me any mind. When you say it, you get articles written about it, right? People care what Jez Corden thinks. So if you come out here and say like, oh, Starfield's gonna be launching in 2021, people will be like, damn, Jez knows what he's talking about. He's been reliable in the past. That's a good possibility it's gonna happen. I say that it's just Rand's just a stupid YouTuber and he's just looking for clicks. He's a clickbait bitch, like.
Oh, bless your little.
Plus, I actually want to know what you think is going to happen this year.
Well, I don't want to make predictions for exactly that reason. I don't want anyone to think just because I've said maybe Starfield comes out this year. I have no information about game devs, and that's something like I don't even dig for leaks about games generally because I think announcements for games should be from the devs always. In a perfect world, hardware as well, but unfortunately, they're a lot more leaky. So it's like if someone's going to leak it, it might as well be me. But I don't dig for leaks for game stuff. So I actually have no information whatsoever about whether Starfield could launch this year. And stuff
what do
like
you
that.
feel in your gut?
What I feel in my gut. How long ago was it announced? A million years.
I mean, I think Starfield was announced in 2018. I want to say.
2018. I think Bethesda could do one of their like and that reveals, and then oh by the way, it's coming out in 6 months thing because that worked really well for Fallout. So yeah, I think Starfield could come out this year, and maybe like Microsoft was motivated to buy Bethesda because they knew they weren't going to have a whole lot of stuff this year. And maybe they're like, oh well, if Starfield's coming out this year, maybe this adds an extra, bit of impetus for us to actually do this. So I think there is a chance it could come out this year, but there's also a chance it could very well not come out this year because we have no idea. We have no idea about it. Don't know what kind of game it is, other than that it's presumably some kind of open world RPG set in space, sci-fi sort of thing. The very name Starfield suggests that, even without sort of knowing anything else about it.
Yeah,
But
I mean, look, me and
I
Jez
don't know.
don't me and Jez do not know the Xbox roadmap of stuff or the internal roadmap of games supposed to be coming out this year. Like clearly, right? Maybe closer to E3, Jez and my stuff will start hearing rumors about stuff that might show up at an Xbox conference, and then eventually, you'll have a better understanding of games that could potentially come out this year. But like, this is just me just kind of looking at the landscape and seeing what is possible, right? Like every time they talk about Bethesda, I don't know how many they mention Starfield like every single time, and they mention Starfield over Elder Scrolls because I think they know even though Elder Scrolls is the bigger game, clearly, you can even make an argument it's bigger than Halo. Like Elder Scrolls is long ways away to the point where like there's no point in mentioning it because it's not coming out till 2024 type mentioning, right? Like you're years away from Elder Scrolls 6, right? It'd be Elder Scrolls 6 because 4 was Oblivion and was 5 Skyrim. 5 was Skyrim, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So they keep on talking about Starfield, and Phil's talked about how Bethesda is going to be important to 2021, which leads me to believe there is a very strong possibility Starfield launches this holiday. And Phil has mentioned before. Countless times how holiday 2021 is way more important than holiday 2020 the launch was because you're going to have supply being essentially equaling demand, and that's when
And the projections are the pandemic will theoretically, touch wood, start to actually seriously wane by holiday season. Once, because like I don't know what the case is in America, but they're expecting the UK to be like mostly vaccinated by the summer. Optimistic prediction there, but because then they need a certain percentage of the population inoculated to make the virus start to go into like sort of to make it so like it can't infect enough people to propagate itself. The reproduction rate, that's right. That's the word I was thinking of. So once that amount of people's inoculated, it should start like the reproduction rate will be so low that things will start going back to normal by the holiday season. And if things are going back to normal by the holiday season, we might not see the same sort of crazy demand for games that we've seen this year because less people will be stuck at home. And also, there's going to be a pretty nasty recession once all those debts come in. After this stuff,
right.
man,
Yeah.
I don't want to sound too bleak, but them's the ropes. The economic, basically, what I'm saying is, long story short, the economic landscape is going to look very different by the end of this year than it does right now, and those could have like big impacts on the way Xbox is perceived and how hard they have to go in on marketing to capture those, capture those dollars on these consoles that is pretty expensive. And also then the Xbox Series S should come into its own too. And like if you've got a game you can sell that thing with, like like an optimized version of Starfield for the Xbox Series S that's also free in Game Pass. That is a good recession console. Man, that's so depressing to think about. But it's one reason. One reason I've read that the Wii did so well during the credit crunch was because it was just so much cheaper than the other options. And then after the credit crunch, like the Wii sales, like just seem to randomly evaporate. And also there's that whole trend about Wii Fit, and even my aunt bought a Nintendo Switch because she wanted to use Wii Fit. That was weird. And she's like the last person I'd ever expect to buy a video game console, but that's a whole nother discussion. So yeah, I
You
think
kind of
like
went off on a tangent there, yeah.
yeah, slightly. Um, I think it would be good if Starfield came out this year alongside Halo, because I don't think you want Halo to do all your heavy lifting so your console, right? There'll also be third party games. Like, do we even know any big third party games that are coming out this year in the holiday season? Like,
Not
there's gonna
yet.
be your Call of Duty, of course, again.
I mean, no, we don't know.
Uh,
We don't know any big third-party games set for this fall. Not yet. I mean,
Battlefield, maybe.
oh well, yeah, Battlefield 6, set to be this holiday, 2021. Presumably a Call of Duty. I don't think there'll be a new Assassin's Creed. Personally,
No, I don't.
yeah, but like the way they talk about Starfield and stuff, like I just have this feeling it's gonna hit in October, and you'll have like Starfield in October and Halo in November, and then potentially Forza Horizon 5 in September, and that would be an incredible 3 months for Xbox. You're like, it's going to be interesting to see what a game like Starfield can do for Game Pass, because the one thing Game Pass misses is super high profile games launching into the service day one outside of Microsoft's first party, right? Starfield would be that game, and it would be like you'd have to see, like, finally get to see the data of like if you put a huge AAA game into the service day one, what it would do, and that's like the first one you could see, because the other games for Xbox, like I don't think Everwild comes out this year. I don't think Forza Motorsport's out this year. State of Decay 3, Avowed, Fable, like I don't think any of them are even close. Even like when you look at some of the Bethesda games that might get announced, something like Wolfenstein 3 or the new game from Arcane, I don't think Wolfenstein 3 comes out this year either. So I think realistically, you're looking at Halo Infinite, Psychonauts 2, Starfield, Forza Horizon 5, As Dust Falls, which is Xbox Global Publishing, surrounded by a whole bunch of indies, and then like the Ubisoft joining Xbox Game Pass in 2021.
And marketing deal for Battlefield, maybe.
And then essentially a marketing deal for Battlefield. You'll have xCloud on iOS. You'll have xCloud on PC. You'll probably even have an Xbox Game Pass Ultimate app on smart TVs at that point in time, right? Maybe even some of the Series X blades will be in xCloud by then at the end of the year, so you can start streaming like the Series X versions of those games. But then everything.
I've actually heard those blades should be going in by the summer.
Well, that's good.
They should have finished the rollout, maybe.
That's pretty good. But I mean, I could be 100% wrong. Like Starfield could be next year. I mean, who knows how development goes? Maybe work from home pushes it to 2022, and it's possible it's just Halo Infinite. Maybe Forza Horizon 5 doesn't come and Starfield doesn't come, and all those games get pushed, and it's really just Halo Infinite once again trying to be the game coming in for the holiday like it was supposed to be at launch. So
yeah.
But here's the question about Bethesda. When do you think that deal's going to close? If you had to guess. They said the first half of 2021 or fiscal year, right? Or this was second half, so that's January to June. If you had to pick a month to take a guess of when that deal actually closes and Microsoft officially owns Bethesda, what month would it be?
Maybe February, March. Maybe March. Maybe not February.
I'm going with February. I think it closes in February. But hey, I mean, maybe it goes all the way to June. I don't think it will. I think they want to get that deal done as fast as they possibly can, so they can start working together as one company and get all their plans figured out about what they're gonna do. And I guess the next thing, like you talk about, because I saw somebody mention in the chat, like obviously the exclusivity, and you've mentioned it before. Like if Starfield is this year, and there is a PlayStation version already being made, do you scrap that version of that game, or do you just say it'll come to PlayStation a year later or day one? Like, what do you
I
think?
think like I think S- I think Starfield could go two ways. I used to think 100% all those games will be exclusive, but I can kind of see a case for both. I think I think it'd save confusion if Microsoft just said all these games will be exclusive, and then people can start associating those franchises with Xbox, and that'd be good for the brand. But at the same time, it's kind of like if you're just bringing on this studio and full of employees who don't know your business and don't feel beholden to Microsoft necessarily, and they've been working on the PlayStation version of this game for years, and then some company just comes along and says, "Oh, by the way, scrap that." I think that'd be strange to do to a company that you just acquired. Um, so I can see it going two ways, and I speak from experience as someone who is from a company that was recently acquired by a bigger one, and how it sort of went down over time. Like over time, Windows Central is gradually moved closer to Future PLC, who bought us. And it wasn't an overnight thing where it was like, oh, by the way, now you have to do these things like Future, you know. So I think like just speaking purely from a logistical point of view, and purely from the point of view of like maybe Microsoft doesn't want to, you know, I don't want to say like hurt morale or whatever, but there'd be some like negative feelings if like you'd worked on the PlayStation version and then it was just scrapped. But I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it's like it was being developed first for Xbox anyway. I don't know.
Well, I
But
mean,
I
we
think it
did we
could
did
go
hear
both.
that Sony was trying to get the exclusivity for Starfield at one point. I mean,
Yeah.
they did get the exclusivity of Deathloop and Ghostwire Tokyo, so we'd imagine like PlayStation wanted that game. Uh, I don't know if that means they saw a PlayStation version of that game running, or they just saw what would be the PC version. But I guess it all. I don't know. Like, if the game's set to come out this year and there is a PlayStation version, like, is it one of those things where it's like, hey, the games that are currently announced will all be multi-platform to a certain extent because there is PlayStation versions made, and then anything after that is exclusive because we're just going to focus on Xbox and PC development. This is something they're going to have to address sooner or later. Like, they can announce that they acquired Bethesda, and any sort of interview that Phil Spencer or anybody at Xbox gives after that point, they're going to ask them directly, what is your plans with Bethesda? And no longer can they hide behind, well, we don't own the company and it would be illegal for us to really kind of say what to do. We'd have to wait. Well, that's gone. You own them. It's not illegal anymore. You're going to have to give a response and be like, and there's only so long that you can basically keep on putting off those announcements. Because you would imagine once the Bethesda deal is also done, that there'll be a round of interviews from Phil,
Yeah.
from Todd
For sure.
Howard, because that's just how PR works. And if you're interviewing them, like if I was interviewing Phil about the Bethesda deal closing, one of the very first questions I would ask would be like, so what are your plans for Bethesda's games moving forward? And it would have to be a very clear-cut answer, right? Am I wrong in thinking that?
No, they do have to clarify because it's the fair thing to do for not only the fans but like the devs. Like, what you're gonna do? You're gonna keep it secret from the devs? Someone will leak it. If they're not upfront about it, someone will leak it. So you might as well just get out and clarify. Um, but Microsoft works in mysterious ways, do we say sometimes, and I do think like at least in the case of Starfield, it could go either way. I think like they could just say, "Yeah, this is going to be exclusive. We need this game to sell our console." Blah 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 blah. I definitely think that could definitely be how they go. But I also see the other way where they can just be like, well, we can put it on PlayStation because it's basically done, and we don't want to rattle any cages too much yet. We've just acquired a company, blah blah blah, and then they can be like, well, we'll use the PlayStation user base to grow the brand of Starfield, and then boom, Starfield 2 is exclusive, and if PlayStation fans who enjoyed the first game want the second one, well, they'll have to switch or get a Xbox Series S or play it on Game Pass on their phone or whatever. But I think it could definitely go either way. If it's virtually done, I don't see why Microsoft would necessarily think like they're not so desperate that they need to pull it. Is what I'm saying. So if it's like nearly done, it's not like they need to pull it. They can sell it and make money on it. But at the same time, they don't need to make money on it either. So it could really just go either way for Starfield. But I do think like Starfield 2 would be exclusive. I do think Elder Scrolls would be exclusive. I do think the next Fallout will be exclusive. I do think a lot of these games will go exclusive. But it's Starfield's a bit weird because we don't really know how close it is and stuff like that. So
Yeah, and the whole what'd you make of the whole Phil interview where with Major Nelson where he said like people made a big thing out of it, but like, oh, Bethesda's very critical to the future of Xbox. It was like, well, yeah, I mean, you spent $7.5 billion on it. I would imagine they're pretty critical to the plans that you have in moving forward, right? And
yeah,
like the fact that they're going to be a lot of RPG games, a lot of good RPG studios. Um, they have a really good, lot of good first person shooter studios. But one of the things he mentioned, and I don't know if you've seen this go around recently, was he mentioned how he's excited for things 3 to 10 years out, right? And he talked about Horizon Zero and Horizon One and Horizon Two, with Horizon Zero
Mhm.
being stuff coming next year, and Horizon One being stuff coming 2 to 3 years from now, and then Horizon Two being stuff coming 3 to 10 years from now. And a lot of people took his quote as saying Phil is telling Xbox gamers they have to wait 3 to 10 years for games. Did you see any of that?
Yeah, I did see that. I did see that talking point emerge. It's it was a weird thing to say, I guess, because it's kind of like you have to think about what their North Star is, right? Their North Star is Game Pass. And with Game Pass in mind, when he's talking about 10 years out, he's talking about like 5G connectivity being everywhere. He's talking about like, Starlink providing internet to markets that don't have good internet. It's like the server infrastructure that's in place for xCloud right now is bottlenecked so hard by the quality of global internet infrastructure. But in 10 years, you're going to have like the Starlink platform that Elon Musk's putting into space, which is, going to provide low cost, high quality, supposedly broadband quality speeds to the whole planet via this satellite array. And you've got things like 5G rolling out, which will also boost xCloud in countries where people don't care to own a TV. They just use their phones or their tablets or whatever. Um, so that's what he's really talking about. And I like a lot of the people who are watching the narrative, they think games, 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 and that's fine. But like Phil Spencer thinks about it a bit differently. He's thinking about the business. He's thinking about where things are going. He's thinking about industry trends. So really, when he's talking about 10 years, that's what he's talking about. He's talking about how far can we push Xbox Game Pass when it comes to tablets and TVs and all these other connected devices as global internet speeds increase. Even like at home, like most people in the UK and America, they have like pretty decent internet speeds if you live in a city or whatever. But like in the future, even like our baseline speed will go up. I remember like the lowest speed you could get 10 years ago in the UK was something like 10 meg down. Like the lowest speed I think I can get now is like 50 meg down. Like the lowest speed in 10 years will probably be like 200 meg down. And like most people will probably be on a gigabyte down as standard, if you live in the city. So that's what I think he's talking about when he's talking about 10 years out. He's not talking about games that are 10 years out. Because what game is 10 years out? You know,
Nothing.
World of Warcraft 2?
I mean, there are games, at most 3 to 4 to 5 years out from here, right?
Yeah.
Um, like
Maybe
maybe four
Starfield
years.
10 years out.
Like you would even think like something like Elder Scrolls is probably the farthest out, but something else for 10 years from now, it's ridiculous. And like it's funny because the examples he gave were Game Pass, XCloud, and Back and Pat as things that started before they were announced, and even still, like Game Pass is evolving as it goes, even though it came out in 2017. XCloud,
Mm.
started out small, and when did it first hit beta? It was it last year in 2019, early 2019, or late 2018? Was it? I forget.
Something like that. I
And
can't
it's
remember.
still like, hey, we're still moving iOS. We still have Windows to hit. We're making an app for smart TVs. Those are all in the pipeline. It's those sort of things that he was talking about. Those services that could happen. He even mentions like some of them don't even work out. Like there's things that you work on for a couple years and then well, this didn't work out. Time to move on to something else. Not games.
Like the new
It's
one.
weird. It's like if you want to talk about what he says, and criticize him for what he says, I'm all for it. But like when he nowhere in that was like, I'm waiting for games 3 to 10 years from now. It's like I don't understand why people need to misrepresent what anybody has to say about anything. Maybe people don't have any listening comprehension. Maybe they're just listening to the wrong people. They see one of their favorite YouTubers or personalities mention that, oh, this was said, and they think it's true, and they don't bother looking into it for themselves to see what was actually the truth, which speaks to a lot of the current day problems that we face here in the world, right? Fake
Yeah.
news and how it spreads. But yeah, like it's just I don't know. It happens every single time. It even gets to the point where people say they kind of wish Phil wouldn't give so many interviews. That he talks too much when there isn't really much to talk about, and that they would prefer it if he acted more like a Sony executive, which means basically never talk to anybody. Where there definitely seems to be two divides. Like I think Xbox fans really like the interaction that Xbox has on social media with some of their personalities and some of their executives, where the PlayStation guys are a lot more closed off. I mean, Jim Ryan, barely gives interviews, doesn't really engage anybody on social media, but that might be a PlayStation like mandate, right? Whereas like on Xbox, you have these people that are known, like Major Nelson and Jeff Rubenstein and Phil Spencer, some of those other people. Whereas like you don't really get the interaction on the PlayStation side, and that's just two separate things. So I do see that a lot. Like, oh, Phil shouldn't talk or he shouldn't answer these questions until he has something to say. Well, it's like, well, it's the end of the year interview with Major Nelson he's been doing for like the last 3 or 4 years, and well, of course they're going to talk about Bethesda. So like, even though he doesn't have anything new to say, should he not talk about it? I'm sorry that you don't get any new information for your video or for your podcast. You know what I mean? Or for
Yeah,
any of the articles, right?
it's funny like how little people empathize with the position. You have to when it comes to this stuff, you have to think about the position he's speaking from and then think about your own position. But some people just can't empathize with another person's position. They only think about themselves. And when they hear 10 years, they somehow warp that into thinking like Phil's talking about games that are 10 years out. And it's like, dude, there are no games that are 10 years out. There are no games being developed right now except for maybe that, what's it called? That space game. I can't remember what it's called now. Do you know what I mean? Ah,
Oh,
that
the
space game was
Star
crazy
Citizen or
fun, man.
whatever.
Yeah, Star Citizen. There's no games that are 10 years out except for maybe Star Citizen. But it's just funny because they only think of it in their own, they frame it in their own, mindset. But really, if you want to be an analyst and be analytical, you have to think about what Phil's actually talking about. What is Phil motivated by? Phil's motivated right now by Game Pass, and xCloud, and well, it's just Game Pass really. It's xCloud is the vehicle to deliver Game Pass to the masses because consoles are finite in their audience. They've arguably reached capacity. Arguably, we're not going to see a huge amount of growth in the console market in terms of new users. You get the new users where they are, which is Android. This is the fundamental difference between like Satya Nadella's philosophy and Steve Ballmer. Like Steve Ballmer famously didn't want to put Office onto like iPads and iPhones and stuff like that. He wanted it to be Windows Phone exclusive. But it's kind of like you've really got to go where the users are if you want to grow your platform. And just because you've got an exclusive product that's good, it doesn't mean the users they're gonna switch their platform to use it. So you have to go where they are, or reduce the barrier to entry so much that that it becomes a no-brainer, which is what the Xbox Series S is for. But even that is too much for some people. So what do? You put the app on their bloody phone. You put the app on their TV. Then the barrier is like, it's minuscule, So that's what he's talking about when it comes to 10 years. And you have to think about it in those terms. I appreciate if you want to have a talking point, and and some people just can't empathize. Like it's literally a block in their brain that they can't empathize with another person's position, and that's fine, But when we're dealing with realities, he's not talking about games. He's talking about Game Pass, and that's that, buddy.
That is that. Hold on, I need to address some of these super chats really quickly. 1 second. We have one from Axel, 1234 Gaming, who says, "When are you going to rename the podcast to the quote, the famous Jez Corden and the stupid Randall Nobody?"
Ah, that's mean.
Yeah.
But when are we going to rename it?
We should definitely rename it that. Jez, the incredibly fabulous Jez Corden and the nobody Randall Thor. Yeah. Reverse World says, if 2021 is the year of Game Pass is supposed to take off, I doubt Microsoft waits all year until November to light the fire. Need something Q1 and Q2. Well, I understand what you're saying. And yeah, like the first kind of releases for January are kind of lackluster. The back half of January looks a little bit better. But it's just kind of sometimes you're at that stalemate of when games are available. Like Halo Infinite's not going to be available until the end of the year. If Starfield releases, it's not going to be available to the end of the year. Same thing with Forza Horizon 5. Sometimes you're just at the mercy of game development and when games are scheduled to release. And even with the Ubisoft thing that me and Jez talked about, it may be one of those things where, when you negotiate back and forth, it takes some time. And they probably also want if you're Ubisoft, you want that to be a big announcement. You don't want that to come in January or February. You want it to come when everybody's kind of shopping for content, and that's at the end of the year, like EA did with EA Access joining Game Pass. Sometimes you're just at the mercy of when people actually do their shopping. It's proven that most people spend more money around the holiday times than they do at the beginning of the year. So any sort of big release at the beginning of the year might be wasted on Game Pass. But I agree with you in the sense that a Game Pass should have constant, huge stuff every single month, just like Netflix does. You can't really save everything until a moment at the end of the year or whatever. You know what I mean? RA89 says, I think Microsoft is counting on closing ZeniMax deal this month or early February. And we're up to a lot of surprises in content because ZeniMax is so big. I agree. I think February they get it done, maybe latest March. And when you actually think about it, like, man, they're like something like them buying Bethesda is just so incredible because it's really the only publisher like that, like a privately held publisher that has a ton of recognizable IP that is huge, that wants to sell number one, right? Because that was the thing. There's been, talk that Bethesda wanted to sell for years. And that's the big thing here, is like they wanted out. And because they were private, there wasn't any of the stuff like you would have to significantly overpay because of the stock prices and all that stuff. And also the relationship that Xbox has with certain creative figures within the Bethesda organization, like Todd Howard, Robert Altman, Pete Hines, and the relationship they have with their franchises and games where, Fallout and Elder Scrolls and Doom all do really well on the Xbox platform, and it's a good fit for it. It's kind of like you could say it's super lucky that this kind of actually happened, because when you look at the other publishers in the industry, that's not necessarily the case, right, Jez? I mean, am I wrong on my assessment on that? Like
Nope.
this is like a four-leaf clover that Microsoft just happened to like pluck at the right time, and there may not be a deal like this in video games for a long, long time, if ever. Just how everything kind of fell into place.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy how well aligned it was.
Yeah.
But it's not like Microsoft is a stranger to this kind of deal. Look at Minecraft.
I
Minecraft
mean,
is
Minecraft, where they just shut off Minecraft Earth.
yeah, that was a pretty good segue to that topic.
So
Oh,
I
dear.
never played Minecraft Earth. I honestly forgot it even existed. What happened with that?
Everyone did. Man, I mean, it is a topic, and Minecraft Earth. For those who don't know, Minecraft Earth was a mobile Minecraft game that shut down, or well, they announced it was shutting down this week. To the surprise of, well, actually, to the surprise of me, because I forgot that it even existed. I was like, oh yeah, that was a thing. But Minecraft Earth, man, is the epitome of a missed opportunity. Like, how do you fail with Pokemon Go's formula and Minecraft combined and fail at it? And I know loads of people in the chat are right now they're thinking, "Oh my god, but COVID! Oh my god, but COVID!" I don't care, COVID, man. Pokemon Go reported record revenues this year, and they changed the gameplay to like lift restrictions on the travel and stuff like that. There were ways to make that game work from home. You know what killed Minecraft Earth was the worst microtransactions I've ever seen in a game. Um, I don't play a lot of mobile games, so I'm sure there are worse. But from like a big publisher and stuff, basically all the microtransactions opposite of what you expect from Minecraft. Like Minecraft, craft. The word craft is in the title, but in Minecraft Earth, you have to pay money to craft things. So you could either like wait several hours, days to craft a stack of materials, so you could craft in the game called Minecraft, or you could pay them some money. So at the very first sight of that, I just uninstalled the game and just never went back to it. Because who wants to pay money to craft a bow when you can just play Minecraft Pocket Edition and do it for free? I just don't get who at Microsoft mandated that system, because it's the worst. It was the worst game design decision I've seen in a really long time.
So you
It
think
was just
there was gameplay problems and design choices they made that really it wasn't COVID that killed Minecraft
it
Earth. It
wasn't
was
COVID.
it was the decisions they had made previously about how the game was going to be structured and monetized.
It was the lack of investment, the lack of vision from the devs. Whoever decided that microtransaction business model was a good idea should be fired. Because it's awful. It's a misunderstanding of what Minecraft is. It's the fact that they made a game that was basically Minecraft but worse and more expensive. It was just a catalog of bad game design. I've never seen anything more ridiculous in my life. And they were like they had the same systems that the regular Minecraft has, but made it a million times more expensive. So why would you ever play that in that state? And it's a shame, because it was a really cool idea. Like you could like do adventures and travel around and smash through the floor, fight skeletons and zombies and stuff. Like it was a really cool concept. And some of the actual gameplay stuff was great. It was the business model that sucked. And it's the business model that sucks in a lot of Microsoft's mobile games, which is why they all seem to fail. Like Gears Pop shut down, Forza Street's probably going to get shut down, like Age of Empires Castle Siege shut down. All their mobile games just fail because I don't know, Microsoft just doesn't take it that seriously, and it's just funny because it's such a lucrative market and they've got such great IPs for it, and it's like how do you keep? Why even bother trying if you're not even gonna, do it right? So I don't know. There's not much more to say about it, but it was just total fail game design, really. Fail business model, really.
Yeah,
But you know, that's the problem with mobile gaming. Is like they think right. Mobile. A lot of these like people who make console games, and they think, oh, we can make a mobile game easy. They get greedy. They get greedy, and they see like all the money that some of the big players in the space are making, and they think, oh, we can do that. We can just drop our brand. We can just drop Forza. We can just drop Minecraft on a game, and the brand will, and people will just give us money. It'll be great, free money, And they get greedy, and then they just forget that. Oh, actually, you have to make things value for money, because like even in like the games with the most aggressive microtransactions, they still have a lot of gameplay that you can do for free, and then maybe you buy microtransactions every now and then or something like that. I don't know. Like Fallout Shelter is a good example, which ironically Microsoft will own this year. Is Fallout Shelter, which is still a pretty big mobile game. It they just Bethesda just wasn't greedy with it. Like you can play that game without spending a penny, you know. But
well, do you
maybe
think?
like there's
I mean, but
I
like
don't know.
Minecraft Earth isn't the only game they didn't have success with. I mean, Gears Pop is being pulled too.
Yeah, I did say that.
Yeah,
I did
yeah.
I did mention that.
So I don't know. Maybe they
Um,
just don't understand what the mobile market wants, or how
yeah,
it's
they're
supposed
just
to.
greedy.
Oh
They're
yeah, there's
greedy
that
with it.
too. Pure greed, right?
They're greedy with it, and I don't know. It's funny because I've played like when I heard Microsoft was buying Bethesda, one of the things I thought immediately was, oh, they'll actually have some mobile games that make money, which is like Elder Scrolls Blades and Fallout Shelter, because like all their other mobile games, except for Minecraft itself, are just total fail. And the only reason Minecraft does so well is because it's literally just Minecraft, but on your phone. And Microsoft didn't make that. You know, I mean, you could argue that yeah, they've done enough development to, you know, decently say that yeah, it's a Microsoft owned game. But Minecraft Pocket Edition was not made by Microsoft. It was that all that sort of business, um, that business model was in place before Microsoft came along. So, and when every time Microsoft tried to make a mobile game, they've just sucked and they've just failed, and it's just funny because it just shows you that you still have to make a good game. Like we all laugh about pay to win, and we all laugh about mobile games, but there's a lot of money to be made if you can make an actual good game on top of it, and not be too greedy with it. Like Genshin Impact and Diablo Immortal is going to be big. I played that a few weeks ago. That Diablo Immortal, which everyone was really mad about it, but I know it's going to be really big, and it's because you can do so much without paying any money. Like there's loads to do without spending any money, like Fallout Shelter and stuff like that. So I don't know. There's not much more to say about it, but
Yeah,
will they continue making mobile games that suck?
probably,
Maybe. Probably.
probably. I would say yes.
Yeah,
And
most likely.
RMB3 says, "Hey, good thing Microsoft owns a competent mobile dev now, huh?" Yeah, one of the
Yeah, that's
studios.
the interesting thing.
Yeah, and I think AlphaDog is a mobile studio too, or is it Roundhouse? If one of those two is the mobile studio that Bethesda had as well. They'll continue to make mobile games. PDD says, "Wouldn't the AAA battle royale in State of Decay boost the franchise?" Jez, what is Xbox's perception within people inside the industry? Thanks. What do you think, Jez?
Uh,
What do you know? What how Xbox is perceived in the industry?
Man, it really depends who you ask. Like some people love them. Like I've spoke to some indie devs and stuff, and they've worked with them for years, and they really like Microsoft, and they like working with them. But I've spoke to other indie devs who don't like Microsoft and don't feel like they had a good experience with them and stuff like that. So it really depends who you ask. I think Microsoft is sort of like Microsoft's in a weird. Microsoft's a weird company because they were so hated for a long time. That whole antitrust thing, Microsoft versus the United States, Internet Explorer, and like all this weird stuff, and like all the all the companies that Microsoft bought and then just shut down because they were competing with them. The way Microsoft behaved in the 90s was like, the worst aspects of corporate America and, well, capitalism in general. It's not just America, but, you know, there was that whole thing they did. And then now they're just sort of like, oh, we're cool, we're nice now. We're Microsoft, we're green energy, we're like super nice, and we want to be nice to everyone, and everyone love us, and blah blah blah. But they're still a massive corporation, which answers to shareholders, and ultimately their only goal is making money for shareholders. That is literally their function in life, you know. And Microsoft's kind of like lucky in the fact that they're not so beholden to their shareholders that they can do some good stuff too. Like there's some companies that like I often wonder if EA falls afoul of this, where they have just like their shareholders so influential over the company's direction that it ends up screwing them up more than other companies. I don't know. That's something I've often wondered about. But it really does depend who you ask. Like some people love them, some people hate them. But I think most people appreciate the fact that they can make a lot of money on Xbox's platform. So,
Yeah.
and I haven't met many individuals at Xbox who I didn't like. I'll put that out there as well. Like Josh Stein and Joseph Stan. Like when I was nobody, like even more of a nobody. Like I had like one of the first interviews I did was with Joseph Staten for Recore. And like I was just like literally nobody, and I was nervous as hell. And he was just so nice. He's like one of the nicest guys I've ever met. I'll never forget like how nice he was, and how he almost like coached me into the interview, because he was like he could tell I was nervous as hell, and he was just like he sort of like led the interview for me basically. It's like saying like this is what Recore's about, blah blah blah, and stuff like that. There's a lot of really nice people who work for Microsoft, but you know, we've all heard about the bad people as well. So it's just like any company, really.
That is true.
It's
I mean,
huge company with loads of individual personalities. So
since you
what can
like
you
State
say?
of Decay, would you like to see a AAA Battle Royale game?
Based on State of Decay,
I mean, I'm assuming he says
well,
SOD. I'm assuming that's State of Decay.
well, they'd have to really elevate the quality of the gunplay. One of the things I really hate about State of Decay is the gunplay. It feels it lacks punch. It feels toy like. It feels like you're shooting Nerf guns a lot of the time. It's improved with some of the weapons they've added over the years, but the gunplay in State of Decay really doesn't feel good, and I don't think it'd be conducive to a competitive multiplayer game. So I can accept it as a PvE game. There's no way I could accept State of Decay 2 as a PvP game with that gunplay and that combat. It just wouldn't work for me. So they'd have to hire some like really good multiplayer combat developers if they wanted to go down that route. But if you're talking about like comparing it to DayZ, for example, like DayZ has this really, that's what it's called, right? That zombie open world battle royale survival game. It's not battle royale, but it's like, PvP, right?
What game?
DayZ.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've never really played DayZ, so
Like if you were comparing, like if you wanted to make a State of Decay DayZ-ish game, they'd have to revamp the combat. But I think it could be cool. But I think their focus is PvE. But who knows, man? Because if they want to make the true zombie simulation game, you can't beat that sort of that fear of coming across another player. We've all seen those cool DayZ videos where something cool happens. Stuff like Rust as well, I guess. I don't know. They'd have to really revamp the combat though to make that work.
yeah. Spooky Sprocket Gaming says, "Hey Ranjaz, great pod as always, boys. Always appreciated. My question is, do you think Stalker 2 releases this year?
No, I don't think this year.
You don't think so?
I think they might announce. I think they might announce it for. Have they announced it for this year?
I want to say they have. There was a new trailer that came out like Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve on IGN, and I think I think it was 2021 was a targeted release date for Stalker 2.
I think that is a game that gets delayed. If you know like the original dev cycle of the original Stalker, and yeah, it was a long time ago, and things might have changed. But if there was any game that I'd expect to get delayed to next year, it'd be Stalker 2.
And
But I could be wrong.
RDX Son of Fett says MVG should do a Kickstarter to put the PS3 on RetroArch. Can't wait for Arc 2, Halo, Exo Mecha, and Medium. Out of those, obviously it's Halo for me. Athiel wants to know, hey, thoughts on the rumored In Exile steampunk AAA RPG? I think it's great that Xbox is going the home of RPGs this gen. That was the topic I had. What'd you think about the job listings or whatever that kind of insinuated that In Exile's next gen AAA RPG might be first person perspective? Did you see that stuff?
I didn't see that stuff. Are they hiring specifically devs with experience in first person games then? Is that what it
Yeah,
is?
and an Unreal Engine, I believe, as well. Yeah.
See, that's cool to know. But man, that's crazy. You're gonna have like Avowed, Outer Worlds 2, and Fallout? That is wild.
And
And then
Elder
like
Scrolls and Starfield and Fable. I mean,
Fable won't be first person though.
well, no, true. And you know, this does kind of line up with what I originally was told back when Microsoft bought them, that their big RPG that they were working on was a sci-fi RPG first person, is what I initially was
Ooh.
told.
Well, that's cool.
And part of me thinks, you
I
know what?
personally don't know anything
Part
about
of
it.
me thinks is like, what if they do something like what Obsidian's doing with Avowed, where it's new but it's based in the Pillars universe, right? Where you know Pillars of Eternity was what top down, right?
Yeah.
Where Avowed is going to be first person. What if an Exile takes Wasteland and has like a first person RPG set in the world of Wasteland, but calls it something different? You know what I mean?
The crossover with Fallout would be aggressive. Because that is basically what Fallout is. Like there was Wasteland 1,
Well, isn't the
and then they
crossover
made
with
Fallout.
Skyrim already kind of pervasive with Avowed? I mean, isn't that what people's first thoughts of though are though? You know?
Man, I guess, but I don't know. Like Wasteland is not really steampunk though. So like if it was steampunk, I'm interested where that part of the rumor came from.
I mean, I didn't. I mean,
Um,
all I was told was that it was sci-fi. Now, steampunk obviously falls under the genre. I mean, sci-fi is a pretty vast setting, and steampunk definitely would fall under it. But the thing about this is like you're not going to hear anything about this game for a while. Like it is in like really early pre-production. You're probably looking at 2023 maybe before you see it. 2024 before it even comes out. Maybe 2025. You know what I mean?
yeah.
This is a game that's not going to be coming out anytime soon. So
I want to believe that it's not Wasteland first person. As much as I love the Wasteland IP, I do think the crossover with Fallout would be strange. And I think it's kind of cool if like because Wasteland is basically the successor to well the original Fallout games, which were the successor to the original Wasteland game. So it's kind of like a neat sort of Ouroboros of game development there. I think it'd be cool if like you got your Fallout for your first person post apocalypse, and then you've got your Wasteland for your CRPG post apocalypse. And then like they do something steampunky for that aspect of it because how many games? There aren't many games that have done steampunk that well. I mean, you could say Dishonored maybe is sort of steampunky, but there aren't many games that have really pushed it to that sort of. Have you ever played Frostpunk?
no, I haven't.
Frostpunk is like for me, Frostpunk is like the best steampunk game. Like when it comes to like the fantasy of, you know, Victorian Britain while also having high tech stuff like Tesla coils and giant robots that are like clockwork and stuff like that. There aren't many games that have really done that very well. So I would like to see, you know, that style of game. If like that part of the rumor wasn't just made up, if it was like true, I would like that. But they do make great RPGs, so whatever it is, I'm sure it'll be awesome. Um, I'm waiting for Wasteland to be polished a bit before I do another playthrough because it was a bit rough when I played it for review. But and also they said they're doing DLC for Wasteland as well, so
Yeah.
there's that as well. Did you ever bother playing Wasteland,
Nope.
or you
Nope.
just
I have
decided
no
not to?
interest. Nope. No interest. No interest
You're a bad
whatsoever in
person.
Wasteland. I am a bad person. RDX Son of Fett says, you think MVG would put PS3 on RetroArch for Xbox Dev Mode? I don't think MVG is the guy that puts the stuff on RetroArch. He just makes videos about it. I mean, I could be wrong, but I mean, actually, I could DM him. I'm friends with him, but I don't think he's the one that puts that stuff on RetroArch, buddy.
What is retro?
It's that that app you can buy on Xbox where it turns your system like you can like play emulated PS2 and Wii games and stuff like that. You know that
On your Xbox?
yeah. You pay $20. You buy.
How is that? How is that? How is that not been banned?
I mean, it's been going on the whole generation. It just kind of started to come up again
Really?
because like because you can turn any of the Xboxes into for $20 you can turn any of the Xboxes into dev mode, right? And you can run unsigned code on the console. One of the things that people have been doing is running this a program called RetroArch, and RetroArch is like a emulator thing, and there's videos up there like this MVG, Modern Vintage Gamer. He basically was the first one to show you, like, hey, this is how you could play Legend of Zelda Wind Waker or Mario Kart, 64 on Series X, or God of War, like the original one, like Metal Gear Solid. It basically is people use it for emulation. And
I had
yeah,
no idea.
we've talked about this before on the podcast.
Have we?
Yeah, we definitely have. And my thing was like,
Oh man.
I would imagine Nintendo and Sony aren't happy that essentially you can play their games emulated on an Xbox if you wanted to. So
Wow.
I don't know how all that comes out, but yeah, you definitely can. Go to his channel, Jez. Channel name is MVG. You'll see it, and he's got a video on it. It's like a huge video that came out a couple months ago, and it's just him basically showing how the Xbox Series S is an emulation beast because it can play all these older games. You know?
Yeah, I remember now. I remember now from the title Emulation Beast.
Yeah. So
I think. Yeah. Okay, that's interesting.
yeah, we've spoken about this. And Mr. Squeen says, State of Decay 2 is the Xbox killer app. I'm soling myself waiting for 3. Great show. Keep it up, guys. Please put the podcast on SoundCloud.
Oh, about that. We don't have the podcast on SoundCloud because it's just too expensive. We use Anchor.fm instead because it's free and does all the same stuff. SoundCloud, like we used to use SoundCloud, but it's just too expensive. And I don't think SoundCloud's long for this world, frankly. They've almost gone bankrupt a bunch of times. So we decided to move to Anchor FM. We're on basically everything except SoundCloud right now. So like we're on Spotify, we're on Amazon Music, we're on iTunes, we're on Google Play, any podcast app, and we're on Anchor.fm. But to be on SoundCloud costs a lot of money. So sorry, we're not on SoundCloud.
I wanted to briefly talk about, and this podcast is obviously going to go a bit longer because we haven't talked in 2 months, or 2 weeks, 2 months.
2 months?
The Xbox battery thing. How Duracell spokesperson said, hey, the Duracell's the reason why Xbox has AA batteries. And then Microsoft had to come out and been like, yeah, no. Like, we just want to give consumer choice. Were you surprised that story blew up as big as it kind of did?
Yeah, it's funny. It's because I tweeted about this and then muted the thread because people started to get offended. But I always think that the controversy. How do you say it, Rand?
Controversy.
The controversy about the batteries in the Xbox controller is purely because it's different to Sony. Like people are like, "Oh man, it sucks that they have AA batteries." Is it really that big of a deal? Like, why is it such a big deal that Microsoft lets people have AA batteries? Like, I would much prefer having the capability to hot swap, batteries in, or use a third party charging dock or whatever, than have a battery that can't be easily replaced, without buying a whole new controller or, you know, getting a T5 screwdriver and buying some dodgy battery pack off eBay and stuff like that. It's just weird to me how controversial it is. Like, who cares, really? Like, both are fine. It's only a battery. But it always seems to blow up whenever any outlet's like, oh man, this is why Microsoft forces you to use AA batteries. Like it's some kind of evil scheme with Duracell or something. It's just weird to me, man.
I think the idea that some
that whole thing's
people,
so controversial.
I love the idea that the reason Xbox uses AA's is because of Duracell. Like, no, Duracell's like, you will not have internal batteries for any of your controllers because of the deal you signed with us, even though the Elite has an internal battery, right? It's clearly Microsoft feels that people would rather have the choice of you can use the AA batteries, you can get a rechargeable battery, and that they just partnered with Duracell for them to supply the batteries. Not that like, well, this deal means you always have to like. And it is weird because it is a PlayStation versus Xbox thing. PlayStation guys will come out and be like, "Oh, you have to swap out batteries," but it's like, yeah, but as soon as your PlayStation controller charge dies, you have to buy a completely brand new controller. Whereas like for this, it's like I just swap out. Like I use Antelope batteries. I have 4 Antelope batteries, right? I charge them, put them in the controller, and then it dies. Immediately swap out for 2 new ones and put the 2 in the charging station, and I'm good to go. But the thing is, like the charge lasts for like a super long time, so it's like, why wouldn't you want it? Like I'm not a big fan of internal batteries because like my PS4 controller didn't last very long, and I always seemed like every 2 or 3 hours I had to have it connected to the PlayStation 4 to charge. I would much rather just put batteries in the controller, and it really turned into this huge like console war thing about batteries versus internal batteries.
Yeah, it's just dumb, man.
Yeah. I don't get it. I don't get it whatsoever. Shout out to the one and only Gaming Forte. Says, long time no see. Hope you and Jez are having a good New Year's. Hope you are too, buddy. Always enjoy your content, and thank you for all the support you show me. You're the best, Forte, and you did a great job on RDX this past week. I didn't get a chance to check out DPS with you and gaming, or with you and Slow Mo, but I will definitely be checking that out soon. So thank you for the support, brother. Yeah, what else we got here? Xbox trying to buy Nintendo and basically being laughed out of the building. Do you see that?
Yeah, that was funny.
Like, can you imagine?
Like, someone from Xbox said that, right?
And the interesting thing is, I was talking to my buddy Gopher about this, and let's hypothetically say it happened. Would you trust Microsoft of 2000 to actually run Nintendo property, or would they have run Nintendo into the ground?
No.
Yeah, right.
Oh my god, I'm so glad that didn't happen. I'm really so glad that didn't happen.
Like I trust this regime and what they're doing to properly use Nintendo and keep them operating as they are. But can you imagine if like Steve Ballmer, like if they had gotten Nintendo back in the early days of the Xbox, they probably would have just like nobody would care about Mario and Zelda at this point. Like Microsoft would have just destroyed that company just because of how they almost destroyed the Xbox. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anyways,
no.
I thought that was an interesting story. And then I think that's pretty much it. You want to take a couple questions before we get out of here?
Yeah, buddy, let's do that. Let's take some questions from the boys.
So if you guys got any questions, make sure you put them in chat. I want to thank each and every one of you for turning out for the show. We really appreciate it. January 8th, the return of the Xbox 2 podcast. Hopefully 2021 is going to be an amazing year for gaming. And, it's always so much better when there's always new stuff to talk about every podcast. Sometimes it's a little bit slower in the beginning months, but I think it's going to be a pretty good year. So if you guys enjoyed the show, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe button, the notification bell, so you're always notified whenever the podcast is live. You can follow me and Jez on Twitter. And if you got any questions, we'll take a few, and we'll just keep on going. HK Gaming says, Jez, why are you such a hero? Yeah, why are you a hero? Everybody loves you. You know.
I don't know. I just love the Xbox community. Like, so many cool people I've met. Guys like you and everyone who DMs on Twitter, and sometimes we end up focusing on negative stuff, but there is so much positivity, and it's awesome. You guys are awesome, and we love you.
Yep.
And I'll keep doing what I do as long as I can.
As long as you can. That's a good one. I mean, it's essentially the same thing for me. Dark Time says, Rand, what's your most hyped game for 2021? PS and Xbox side. Well, I mean, obviously Halo Infinite. That was my most anticipated game last year, and now it's 2021, so it's my most anticipated game. So for Xbox, it would be Halo. For PlayStation, I mean, they say God of War is 2021, so if it really is 2021, it would definitely be God of War. I mean, I personally don't think God of War will come out next year, but until they say 2022, it would be God of War. I think that I don't know. You guys know, like, I basically gave Red Dead Redemption 2 and God of War like my 1A, 1B game of the generation, essentially. So, yeah. Methuas Santos says, we just want rechargeable battery included. So that's some of the other thing, is that some people want rechargeable batteries included with the controller and not just AA.
The thing is, like, there's a reason Sony's controllers are more expensive. Like, decent rechargeable batteries ain't cheap, Like, the rechargeable battery in my Series 2 Elite controller is amazing. Like, it lasts for 1,000,000 years. It retains the charge really well, but it's also really expensive. It's an expensive boy, Like, the battery you get in a $1,000 smartphone is much better than the battery you get in like a $300 smartphone. But like, so it's kind of like a case of options. You have the option of using the cheaper AA batteries or cheaper rechargeable battery packs, or you can buy like a more expensive battery pack, or you can buy like Loops and stuff like that. So you can add that cost on if you want to, or you can just leave them wired and then have it cheaper. So it's ultimately about options. Like, it really is, Like my Switch Pro controller, man, can barely retain a charge after a few years. And that controller is really expensive. I'm really disappointed with it, actually.
Yeah.
So, it's a double-edged sword.
Mighty Ryan says, what is your dream remaster game? So, one of my dream remaster games already got remastered with Shadow of the Colossus. Like, I love Shadow of the Colossus, right? I would also say Silent Hill 2, like, completely remade in today's graphical standards and settings would be, oh my god, I can't even, like, but I'm going to pick, and I know maybe Jazz will maybe have the same one, or I can't wait to hear what you say. You know what? Knights of the Old Republic, remade today, in today's standard, I think would be ridiculous, and that would be, like, the one I would be, like, that would be the dream remaster for me. What about you?
My dream remaster would be Final Fantasy VII.
But it did get remastered. What are you talking about? It got remade.
Nope.
Hey, do you think
the combat? They fucked up the ending. It didn't get remade.
Do you think that game's coming to? You think that game's going to be announced for Xbox this year?
That's a good question. Who knows, man? Like, it's funny. I actually saw a Kotaku article the other day calling out Microsoft for not delivering any of the Final Fantasy games they promised. I don't know what's going on with Microsoft and Square Enix. It was so weird when Phil said, "Oh yeah, by the way, Final Fantasy 14 Realm Reborn is coming to Xbox," and then Square Enix were like, "Is it though? Is it though?" it's just so weird the way Microsoft and Square Enix behave towards each other.
And then Final Fantasy
Like,
16 and Project Agita being a 2-year exclusive for PlayStation. You know.
yeah, like what is the deal with that? So
Yeah.
God knows, basically. Final Fantasy. It'd be great to get like Final Fantasy 7 remake, with Xbox Series X, PlayStation 5 enhancements this year, but you just don't know because Square Enix is so weird. And I also hate what they did to the story of my favorite game of all time. Speaking of which, I would love to see Final Fantasy 9 get that kind of graphical remake. I mean, I don't know why Square Enix hates turn-based combat so much, but Dragon Quest has great turn-based combat, and so does Yakuza Like a Dragon. So why not just actually remake it? Don't make you like that. I mean, Final Fantasy VII Remake was great. I reviewed it myself, and I gave it high scores, just because I personally didn't like what they did with the story. Didn't affect my enjoyment or my recommendation of the game. And the combat was really good. I actually really liked the combat too. But I wanted Final Fantasy to be Final Fantasy, for God's sake.
Yeah.
We're never going to get turn-based Final Fantasy again, man.
No,
It
you
makes
never
me
will.
depressed.
Nope. RDX Son of Fett says, "Isn't MVG an OG Xbox emulation programmer?" I have no idea, man. He might be, but I don't think he is. I mean, I could be wrong. I'm not really sure. Pong Soul wants to know, hey, any thoughts on the Dying Light losing their another main dev, which I think they lost their lead writer after he worked there for 22 years. You see that?
I did not see that. That is crazy.
Yeah,
I think that game's never coming out.
I think that game's has a lot of problems, a lot of dev issues.
Hellraid. They were making a game called Hellraid, right?
That Hellraid, no, that already kind of came out. There was a small project.
Not Hellraid. What was it called? They were making a game about. They were making Dying Light in Hell, basically, at some point, and that got cancelled. And they just thought, okay, we'll make Dying Light 2. And then this just seems like it's in total development hell right now.
Yeah, definitely does see that. Mighty Ryan wants to know, NSYNC or Backstreet Boys? Backstreet Boys, man, all the way. No, I don't. Whatever. Like, if I had to guess, like the ones I remember from back then would be probably more for the Backstreet Boys.
I don't know if I remember any of the NSYNC songs, but I remember some of the Backstreet Boys songs.
Shino wants to know, hey, when will the full specs for the Series X be updated, meaning the machine learning and everything else?
Yeah.
That means, who knows, bro? Like, he's talking about, like, full RDNA 2 stuff, like the direct learning or machine learning, and I have no idea. I don't know. Will it ever? Who knows? Will the devs take advantage of it? Your guess is as good as mine, man. I have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. RDX says, most of the emulated games you played in OG Xbox were made by MVG. That's why he's internet famous. Well, I haven't really played any emulated games, so I've never played them. But if you say so, I mean, you know what? Maybe I'll DM him and ask, like, hey, are you the OG Xbox emulator dude? Because the guy in my chat was really saying you were. So maybe I'll DM him and ask him. Let's see what else we got here, or is this it? Yeah, I think that's it. So, I want to thank everybody for tuning in for the first podcast of 2021. It was a pretty damn good one. We'll be back next week, the 15th, hopefully, for another show. You can always hit the like and subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell for more content, whether it's podcast or videos. Follow me and Jez on Twitter. Jez tweets a lot, and people love him, and I don't tweet at all, and I'm a nobody. So, I promise
Maybe you should tweet more, man.
I probably should, but I just don't know what to say.
I've decided I'm gonna start tweeting less this year. I'm gonna take it a bit easy because in November my resting heart rate was 130 beats per minute, which is not healthy. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna try and take it a little bit more easy this year because last year I was slowly killing myself, I think.
So with that said, we will see you next week. Anything to say, Jez, before we get out of here?
Nah, just, thanks for joining us for another year. Great, epic podcasting, and, keep it gaming and be nice to each other. And let's make 2021 better, please.
That's right.
somehow.
So keep it gaming, guys, and we'll see you next week. Have a good one.